Take me back to that first day when you guys found something there.
We were endeavoring to find what were known as the lost dinosaurs of Egypt. No paleontologist had really worked within about 1,000 kilometers of that site called the Bahariya Oasis. Perfect conditions for me. By the end of it, we have 145 bones of this giant creature. This thing is 10 tons heavier than a Boeing 737. 13 bull African elephants, 9 T-Rex. It's the world's second largest dinosaur. Yeah, if you look there, monsters.
Yeah.
Now, in the case of T-Rex, those tiny arms make its murderous bite possible. So as its head got bigger, as its bite got stronger, its arms got littler. So you can't have both. T-Rex is about the most badass thing that's ever walked on land. But if you look at the extinction of species, look up the fringe-limbed tree frog. That particular individual, its name is Tuffy, the last of his species. It's a lineage that survived all 5 mass extinctions, including the one that took out the dinosaurs, but it couldn't survive us. Since 1970, 72% of wildlife has disappeared on the planet.
Have you had conversations with Ben about the idea of potentially producing a dinosaur?
Well,
hey guys, if you're not subscribed, please smash that subscribe button and hit that like button on the video. And if you don't have time to watch this episode right now, no problem, but I'd really appreciate it if you would save it to your watch later playlist. Finally, if you'd like to follow me on Instagram and X, those links are in my description below. Thank you. I had our mutual friend Ben Lamb here a couple months ago, and he brought you up during our podcast. He's like, yeah, it's my dinosaur guy. You got to talk to him. And I was like, yeah, I want to talk with this guy. And then he sent me your information, and I realized you were in my old backyard. You're right down there at Rowan. I recorded the first 162 episodes of this podcast right there. I never had you in. I'm sorry about that.
that's crazy. Would have been a much better commute.
I'm also kicking myself, though, because you guys have built an unbelievable, I don't even know if you call it a museum. I don't know what you call it. It's like a live dig place off of Exit 53 on Route 55 down in Mantua, New Jersey, literally in my old backyard, of insane like dinosaur fight. Can you just tell us about this? It's nuts.
Sure. It's called the Edelman Fossil Park and Museum. It is about 20 minutes outside Philadelphia, about an hour and a half from New York. And it's located on 123 acres. And there we have a 4-acre, 45-foot deep fossil quarry that goes down to the last moments of the dinosaurs. Me and my crew have been doing research there for about the last 17 years. And in those 17 years, we have collected over 100,000 fossils representing over 100 species.
100,000?
Yeah. And each of those individuals is a literal victim of the asteroid strike that happened 66 million years ago, 1,500 miles away off the Yucatan Peninsula. So it becomes the best site in the world. It becomes the best site in the world to see the last moments of the dinosaurs.
All right, I got a million questions. Let's just start at the beginning. How did you first discover this? You said it was 17 years ago? Is that right?
Well, I started working there in 2003, so more than 20 years ago.
22. Wow.
Yeah. It was a working mine. It was a marl quarry, what farmers call marl, as in Marlton, Marlborough, places like that. It's a green sand that forms only in marine environments, and it's dug up and used as a fertilizer for plants that like acidic conditions, like tomatoes and peppers. So they started that business there in 1926. And they ran with it for many, many decades. I started doing what we would call salvage paleontology there.
Salvage paleontology.
It's literally just following the bulldozers around and seeing what they might dig up. And I honestly, in the beginning, I didn't think much of the site because you can't do a lot of science if you can't set up the right context there, if you can't grid it out in 1 meter squares and excavate carefully. So it was a place where I could take my students and, they could get some practice finding fossils. And then I would go everywhere else in the world for my research. I'd go to North Africa and the Gobi Desert and Patagonia. But then in 2007, the quarry owner told me that the company was going to go belly up and they were going to fill in the quarry and they were hoping to build a Costco there.
A Costco.
Yeah.
On top of like the craziest what would be remains of dinosaurs.
That's right.
Wow.
And so I thought, wow, that'd be a shame to lose this.
I do love Costco, though. I just want to throw that out
It's
there.
handy, yes. So I raised enough money to rent a corner of the quarry so that we could grid it out and start to excavate properly. And once we started to do that, then I started to appreciate what we really had there. I saw that we had a lot of articulated skeletons, meaning that they didn't get roughed up after they died. They didn't get washed in from elsewhere, that they died there and were buried there together. And then we started to do elemental analysis. We started to look at things under the microscope, and we found the fallout from the impact crater that happened 1,500 miles away in Mexico. And so at that point, I know we have this extinction layer, and I know it needs to be preserved. And us paleontologists, we usually try to keep our sites a secret for obvious reasons.
Yes.
But I realized if we're going to save this site, we have to build a grassroots effort around it. And what's really cool about this site is that above that research layer that we manage and curate very carefully, there are layers of sediment from just after the last moments of the dinosaurs that are still full of fossils. And those fossils aren't especially scientifically useful. So their best purpose is really for outreach and education. So I team up with the township, Mantua Township. We decide we're going to have a community dig day. We have no budget. We put a sign on the road. We send out some emails. I'm hoping maybe 75 people show up on a Saturday morning.
Is this 2007? Still?
No, this is 2011.
How did I miss this?
I don't know.
I was like in high school. This was great. Oh my God.
So 1,600 people show up on a Saturday.
Wow.
And we were not quite ready for that. It was a little scary, but we got really good at running these community dig days. When we would put out the alert, the 2,000 spots would sell out in like 14 minutes, and we'd have 9,000 people on the waiting list. Oh my God. And so that was proof of concept. I was at Drexel University at the time. I was trying to launch the project from there. I couldn't really get the traction that I needed. And I started talking to the president of Rowan University, Ali Hushman, who built that place from a sleepy little state college into an amazing, world-class research university, and transformed the town as well in the process.
I used to have guests stay at the Marriott right
there.
Yeah,
that's right.
I remember when I was a kid, like Rowan, like you said, it was like this smaller, like kind of off the beaten path school, and now it's this sprawling, beautiful campus and everything, and turned it into a whole college town.
It's incredible, the transformation. So Ali and I, we have breakfast at Angelo's Diner in Glassboro, which is how you do it in New Jersey,
That's
right?
how you do it.
And by the end of breakfast, we decided that I was going to move to Rowan University. I was going to become the founding dean of the School of Earth and Environment, and we were going to work together to raise money to build this fossil park museum and buy the land as well. So as soon as I got there, Rowan bought the property. He introduced me to two amazing people, alumni of the university, Gene and Rick Edelman. They stepped up and made an incredible $25 million contribution to this project. And then we hired architects and exhibit designers. Meanwhile, I'm building the School of Earth and Environment. I did that for 8 years. I left about 2 years ago. And we built a new school with a Department of Geology, Department of Environmental Science, Department of Geography, Sustainability and Planning. And I left with about 36 professors there and 400 students.
That's got to be cool to look back on building something from scratch like that
as
quickly as you did, right?
I'm very proud of all of them. And then we broke ground on the museum about 3.5 years ago. And 3 months ago, we opened this amazing $75 million, 44,000 square foot museum with exhibits, the likes of which the world has never seen, 3 big exhibit halls, a live animal center, Discovery Forest, which is very hands-on, tactile place, collections and conservation, immersive free roaming VR, beautiful museum store, cafe, paleontology themed playground, about 2 miles of nature trails, and the quarry dig experience. So it's incredible. And people are now finding out about it, and they're coming from all around the country. We have people that are actually flying in from Europe just to do this experience.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Now, can we pull this up, by the way, Joe? I want people to see this.
It's beautiful architecture.
It's hidden by those trees when you come around that bend on 53. That's why I didn't see it. But like, you're building obviously something that's also family friendly, and there's a lot of ways to learn there, and it's like amazing architecture.
Yeah.
But you have built it on top of a space that you are, as I understand it, continuing to find new materials on. As far as you know, you might have only tapped 1% of it at this point. So how do you have something like that on top of a potential gold mine and not worry about if you're going to damage something and building it, or you know what I mean?
Yeah, well, we would never get that far. So, and there you see it. It's really gorgeous.
It's beautiful.
It was designed by an architect named Tom Wong at Eniad, just across the Hudson here in New York.
Shout out, Tom.
And the building is based on a metaphor, which is the camera obscura, which is an ancient device. It's like a pinhole camera the size of a room. An artist would go inside and they get a projection of the landscape on the wall and they would paint on top of that. And so it's a device that can change your perception about the world, about the landscape. And that's what we're trying to do in this museum. You see, the building is composed of a series of lenses. And in one direction, the other side here, in that direction, they look to the quarry, they look to the ancient, and we think about the ancient past. On the other side, we look to the present and we contemplate the future. And the answer to your question is there's so many fossils in this layer under the property. It's taken us 17 years to excavate 250 square meters out of a giant 4-acre quarry. We have 123 acres, so we will never get to all the places, right? So, I mean, you could excavate for many, many, many generations and not use all the land there.
But it just blows my mind. This is in Mantua, New Jersey, where these dinosaurs were. All right, like I said, there's about 40 million questions in my head, so we're going to be jumping around a little bit today, and I'm sure we're going to have you back at some point here, Ken. But let's just start with the basics here. Asteroid hit approximately 66 million years ago. The fallout from that, how long did it take? Let's start there. How long did it take for dinosaurs to officially be extinct after it hit?
Shockingly, I think they were functionally extinct within an hour after the impact.
Within an hour.
Yeah. So the asteroid comes down. It's about 11 miles across or 18 kilometers, going roughly 45,000 miles an hour, comes in from the northeast. We think it hit in the springtime because of some fossil fish in North Dakota trapped in this layer, and they have spring pollen in their gill rakers.
That's preserved?
Yeah. Yeah. Pollen is almost impossible to destroy.
Apparently.
If you want to get fossil pollen, you take the rock and you dissolve the rock with hydrofluoric acid, and the pollen remains.
Whoa.
That's how you collect fossil pollen.
This is the stuff I know nothing about. But that's like putting into perspective through everything the Earth has been through since then, 66 million years ago, the idea that anything would still exist blows my mind.
Well, 66 million years ago is not that long ago.
Blink of an eye in terms of this rock.
So if you took the 4.5 billion year history of the Earth and you put it on a single calendar year with the Earth starting on January 1st, and you run through that calendar, 66 million years ago on that calendar is Christmas Eve.
Yep. It's crazy.
So if you're at a New Year's Eve party and you talk about events that happen on Christmas Eve, how do you describe it? You say, oh, I just saw Bob on Christmas Eve, right? He was just here. Dinosaurs were just here. 66 million years ago just happened.
Yeah. You may have heard of HelloFresh. They send chef-crafted recipes and fresh ingredients to your home. But this summer, they made their biggest menu upgrade yet. This isn't the HelloFresh you remember. It's bigger. HelloFresh has doubled its menu. Now you can choose from 100 options each week, including new seasonal dishes and recipes from around the world. So you can dig into bigger portions that'll keep everybody satisfied. It's also healthier. Feel great with a nutritious menu filled with high protein and veggie-packed recipes. HelloFresh now helps you eat greener, as their veggie-packed recipes now have 2 or more veggies. And finally, it's tastier. You can now get steak and seafood recipes delivered every week at no extra cost. And there's 3 times more seafood now on the menu, also at no extra cost. Discover new seasonal produce each week, from snap peas to stone fruit to corn on the cob and more. I'm pretty boring with my cooking when left to my own devices, so chicken, broccoli, brown rice, that's pretty much always the go-to. But since I've been getting some HelloFresh, I've been able to switch it up a little bit while keeping my same levels of proteins and carbs and vegetables on the menu. The best way to cook just got better. Go to HelloFresh.com/Julian10FM now to get 10 free meals and a free item for life. That link is in my description below. 1 per box with active subscription. Free meals applied as discount on first box. New subscribers only. Varies by plan. Once again, that's HelloFresh.com/Julian10FM to get 10 free meals and a free item for life. Check out that link in the description below. But we see how much can change. You know, you can watch a time-lapse video right now of something sitting outside for 30 days. and it like disintegrates away. So the idea, yes, you're 100% right that in the context of the history of this planet we're on, it's a blink of an eye ago, but there's still so much time where things could disappear, and yet we have stuff that's preserved in that amazing of a capacity. It's amazing. It's incredible to me.
That's right. So that asteroid hits.
And it hit in Mexico, you said?
It hit off the coast of the Yucatan Peninsula off Mexico in the Gulf of Mexico.
Dumb question, Ken. What did the continents look like again at that point? Were they all together still? Or
the world is looking pretty modern by the end of the Cretaceous period, by the end of the times of dinosaurs. So if you looked at a paleogeographic map, in fact, you can pull one up. If you hit paleogeographic map in Cretaceous, you will see that the continents are recognizable compared to their current forms today. They're a little bit different, like the Isthmus of Panama hadn't closed up yet and things like that. That's a little too early. That's about 250 million years ago. Yeah.
You were only 175
only a couple hundred million years off. Yeah. Look up late Cretaceous and paleogeography.
What's that? CRU?
Creta, C-R-E-T-A. So Cretaceous is named for the White Cliffs of Dover. The chalk there is of Cretaceous age. Latin for chalk is Creta. So Cretaceous means the time of chalk.
Oh, there we go. Whoa, yeah, you're right. And you could, you know what's crazy? You can see how...
Yeah, that's a little, I think that's Jurassic. It's a little earlier. I can't read it.
Well, we're getting
here,
closer,
it looks
right?
Jurassic. You're getting pretty close.
All right.
Yeah.
All right. So do you think people could get the idea from this?
Yes. Well, you can see those continents are recognizable.
Yeah.
At this point, right?
Is the blue, a dumb question, but is the blue representative of stuff that's still covered in water when we're looking on the continents themselves?
The light blue is our shallow marine seaways.
Right.
So continental shelf and running up through North America. Sea level got so high that the Gulf of Mexico came up through the middle of North America and connected to the Arctic Ocean.
Whoa.
So during most of the time of the dinosaurs, North America is two big islands, one in the west, one in the east. In New Jersey, we would be off the east coast of the eastern island of North America. So southern New Jersey, where our fossil park is, was in the ocean at the time. The coastline would actually be up into Pennsylvania, maybe 20 miles or so. It's been lost because Pennsylvania is erosional and that sediment collects to form the coastal plain and the continental shelf. So there'd be marine creatures where the fossil park is. At the museum, at the location of the museum, sea level would be about 70 feet over your head. And all dinosaurs lived on land. Those big, scary sea monsters like plesiosaurs and mosasaurs, they're not dinosaurs. They're marine reptiles.
All right. Is that just like is that semantics?
No, it's not. They don't have a dinosaur in their family tree. You and I are mammals because we have the first mammal for an ancestor.
Right.
If you don't have the first dinosaur for an ancestor, you can't be a dinosaur.
So they're a different species.
Their lineage branches off before there is the first dinosaur.
But they coexisted with dinosaurs.
Yes. Yeah. Same thing with the pterosaurs, like pterodactyls, the flying reptiles. Not dinosaurs. Your children's books have lied to you.
I didn't like that in Jurassic Park. They were not friendly.
No, but they're not dinosaurs. They're flying reptiles.
They're whatever they are, but I don't like them. Yeah. Left a bad memory.
You could leave a review, I guess.
But so what would the weather have been like in Mantua, New Jersey, or around that area before the asteroid hits? Because you and I both know we have winters now that get down to 10 degrees and it snows, and we have summers that get to 100 degrees. But I've never really thought about how I always assumed everything's warm with dinosaurs, which is probably a dumb assumption, but what was it like back then?
Well, it was warm. The Cretaceous and the Mesozoic in general, the time of the dinosaurs, was a very warm period. It's warm because there's a lot of CO2 in the atmosphere. But that CO2 was accrued over millions of years, not like what's happening today, which is like all at once, which is devastating. But the planet warmed slowly over tens of millions of years, really. So at the time of the dinosaurs, it's so warm that there's no ice at the poles. And so all that ice that we have today, that water is in the ocean. And that's why sea level was so high. So it raises the level of the sea by about 300 feet. Antarctica is already at the South Pole at the Cretaceous. So it's there, but it's not glaciated. It's forested. And because it's at the South Pole, it still gets 6 months of darkness. So we don't have a modern analog for that environment. So what's going on in the dark polar forest of Antarctica for 6 months a year? Nobody knows. It's crazy.
I liken it to, you've heard people talk about before how we've only discovered like 5% of the oceans or something like that. I would imagine when you're looking at periods that are also completely past, you've only discovered 0.05%
I think that's probably
of what
right.
you know, right?
I think that's right. Yeah. Mm-hmm. It would not be 1%. It's a very, very small fraction of a percentage.
Now let's start here with a fun one though, because I hear people talk about this. Now I have seen pictures of you with full bones of dinosaurs. In fact, we'll get to it, but you discovered a literal dinosaur and got to name it, which is really, really cool. It's a nice little flex on the resume right there. But there's people who are trying to say now, oh, this isn't real. Dinosaurs don't exist. That wasn't real time. Somebody made that up. So if you could disabuse people of that notion, how would you go about that other than showing them all of the pictures of bones that very clearly represent something that is not of this earth right now?
Well, I'm pretty sure my back hurts because dinosaurs existed. So I'm positive about it. I don't know where to go with that. I have found hundreds of dinosaurs. Not all big complete skeletons like some, but pieces of dinosaurs, hundreds. They existed. It's an entire branch of science with thousands of scientists, and we know a ton about it. And so, the things that we argue about with dinosaurs is, exactly who was the closest cousin of this other dinosaur, and did the little dip in its shoulder, was it a little bit more pronounced or a little less pronounced? I mean, it's a very sophisticated and nuanced field. And, to start with a question like, if somebody says like there weren't dinosaurs, that's kind of like telling a planetary scientist like there's no Jupiter.
It feels a little flat Earth to me. Like when people say that, because there's just, when I see things that have such significant evidence, and it's like where did we get all this stuff from? It just came out of thin air.
Yeah, so I can tell you one thing, which is one way to demonstrate it is, so now there's a field called molecular paleontology.
Molecular paleontology.
Yeah, and so we can, and we do this in my lab, we can demineralize dinosaur bones and recover routinely now their proteins in blood vessels and bone building cells. Proteins have hereditary information in them. It's not as robust as DNA, but you can sequence proteins and make family trees from them. And this was started by a friend and colleague of mine, Mary Schweitzer, she used to be at North Carolina State. And we've exchanged lots of grad students and done some of this work. You can sequence these proteins, and then if it was contamination or something, it could fall out anywhere in this giant database of proteins. But if it's really from a dinosaur, it's going to fall out next to their closest living relatives, which are crocodiles. Crocodiles aren't dinosaurs, but they're the closest living relatives.
They look like it.
And birds. Birds are literal dinosaurs.
Literal.
And we sequence these proteins, and they fall out between birds and crocodiles. And so we have molecular evidence that these things are what we think they are, that they are dinosaurs. And of course, we have the skeletal evidence as well. And we can see it in, the geological record is like a layer cake, right? Except you don't get the whole cake anywhere, right? You get this piece of the cake here and this piece of the cake there. But we know when dinosaurs first appeared. We know how long they persisted. We know exactly when they end. And it doesn't matter if you're in Afghanistan or Antarctica or New Jersey or China. They always start and end exactly where we know them to start and end, right? Like they behave geologically. They're predictable. It's obvious that that's the story.
Yeah. Now, approximately how many years ago did the first dinosaur that we know of walk the Earth?
The first dinosaur was about 237 million years ago.
Okay.
So that's the Triassic period.
Triassic period.
Yeah. The Mesozoic, which is the time of dinosaurs, is Triassic, the now famous Jurassic, and the Cretaceous.
Okay. Now, how do we... Again, a million questions. How do we mark off those eras? What behaviorally or that we can observe from dinosaurs makes it change officially from one era to the other?
They're all defined by extinctions, and there's a There's a commission called the International Commission on Stratigraphic Nomenclature.
What a name.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm going to get them some rebranding.
And yes, they could use it. And it's a large group of scientists, and they define these. There's eons, and there's eras, and there's periods, and there are epochs, and they all fit inside each other, and they define what the boundaries are based on the extinction of certain organisms or the extinction of groups of organisms. And the big boundaries have to do with big extinctions. So the end of the Paleozoic, the start of the Mesozoic, which is the time of the dinosaurs, that happens when we have the world's worst mass extinction. It happens about 250 million years ago. It's 255. It's the end of the Permian period. We lose 95% of species on the planet. So if you're a geologist or a paleontologist and you're working in rocks that are around that boundary, it's very easy to tell which side of the boundary you're on because 95% of the species disappear above that. When the dinosaurs go extinct 66 million years ago, that's the end of the Mesozoic era and the start of the Cenozoic era, which we're still in. Again, it's very easy to tell you're at that boundary because 75% of the species go extinct there.
But the 75%, that was going to be my next question, the 75% that goes extinct includes all dinosaurs, except for birds.
That's right.
Okay.
Yep.
Fascinating. So when dinosaurs were first on the earth, because like most of us out here are looking at this from a layman's perspective, and we think about, oh, Jurassic Park, T-Rex running around, raptors, all that. But when they're first on the earth, what were some of the, I don't know, recognizable dinosaurs that we might know today that existed in that? I forget the name of it.
Triassic.
The Triassic period.
We're actually sitting on the Triassic here in Hoboken.
We're sitting on the Triassic?
Yeah.
What does that mean?
Well, the Triassic is the time when the supercontinent of Pangea breaks up.
Right. That's what I was looking for earlier.
That means the Atlantic Ocean basically starts to unzip, right? And there was a time when you could stand here in Hoboken and look about a mile across the ocean to Africa.
That's so cool.
And so, the Palisades, which go right up the river here, those are basalt flows. Basalt comes from magmatic eruptions of ocean-type magma. And that happens here when the Atlantic Ocean forms, when Pangea rifts open. And all the gas that was released during that rifting caused the world's fourth mass extinction. So the evidence of the fourth mass extinction is in the Palisades along the Hudson at the top of New Jersey, and the evidence for the fifth mass extinction is at the Fossil Park in southern New Jersey.
Not to be confused with my Vinnies and Carmines out there who are looking at other types of extinctions that have happened in the Palisades.
That's right.
Just got to throw that out there. There's been a few since then.
Yeah.
But wow. So it's crazy because you just wouldn't think that. I mean, look at the wall right here. What's right across the river? This is what we have here now, and the idea that there were like dinosaurs running around here, or where it was underwater and the land's over there and the dinosaurs are right there. It's just crazy.
At that time, 255 million years ago, this was an apocalyptic hellscape. This volcanic fissure. It was just.
It still is. All right. So the Triassic period, though, the very first one. So, what types of species? Let's start with dinosaurs.
Dinosaurs
what types
are
of species
small.
exist?
Dinosaurs are about the size of a house cat.
Oh, wow. Right? So they could be a pet.
They could menace nothing bigger than a bug at the time.
Wow.
They evolve into probably the hardest time on Earth since there's been complex life on Earth, because we've just had this horrible mass extinction at the end of the Permian period. Almost everything is dead. The complex life on planet Earth almost goes out of business. And the first thing that kind of gets the jump, back are crocodiles. And so we're kind of living in a crocodile world. In the Triassic period. There's an 8-foot tall bipedal crocodile in the Triassic period.
So it's running after you.
It's like Wally Gator from hell.
Yeah. No, thanks. I'm out on that.
And so dinosaurs evolve into this world, and they don't really make a lot of headway because of the crocodiles dominating everything. So they're small, they're kind of spindly. The oldest one we know of at the moment is Nyasasaurus from Tanzania.
Can we pull that up? Nyasasaurus?
Yeah.
Let's do that.
But it's tiny. And they stay that way until the fourth mass extinction, which we have the evidence for right along the Hudson here. And for some reason, that kind of knocks back the crocodiles and the dinosaurs. The dinosaurs are the ones that get there. Well, no, that's kind of a crazy. I think that might be a CRISPR accident right there.
That's a great.
Like a watermelon and a lizard or something.
That's why I was looking at Ben. I'm like, don't you open Pandora's box too badly here, my friend. He's like going to come out with like, oh, it's a velociraptor. Sorry.
Yeah,
it's twice the size now.
It's NYSSA.
NYSSA, we got it, Joe? What are we looking at? Yeah, we got to make sure we get it right so people aren't seeing a new demon from hell.
NYASSS. Yeah.
Okay.
Right. But it's a little spindly dinosaur.
And you said it was like approximately this size?
Yeah, there we go.
Which one do you want?
I think that the picture on the upper right looks
right
good.
there. So this thing would have been about this big, you're saying?
Yeah, I mean roughly the size of a cat.
Mm.
Right. And so, they're not too tough.
Now his legs are on the ground bipedal, and then he's got hands, but he's still hunched over in like the position of a cat at the time.
Yeah. Early dinosaurs were all bipedal, these kinds. And the thing that is different, the thing that makes dinosaurs dinosaurs and separates them from their reptilian kin. Think about a lizard. They have a very sprawling, languid posture with elbows and knees bent, belly on the ground, tail dragging behind. A lizard is always like a half a push-up away from taking a nap, right? That's not dinosaurs. Dinosaurs have their legs under their body.
Yes.
Their ankles are hinged for straight ahead forward motion. They have very strong hips. They have at least 3 sacral vertebrae that connect one side of their hip to the other. So it makes like a strong bone box to which you can attach powerful leg muscles. So dinosaurs are more like mammals in that we're fully upright creatures that, stand mostly, not lay mostly, and are ready to go. So they're vigorous creatures.
Now, one thing my friends will tell you I'm known for is I'm not the guy you go to New York City with if you aren't planning transportation in advance. So what I mean by that is I'm basically the dude that'll tell everyone, oh, it's just another couple blocks, and it's really actually like 3 miles, because I love walking, especially in the city. I never take an Uber. I couldn't even tell you the last time I took a subway when we weren't going to Brooklyn. And another thing about me is I do like wearing high-top shoes, so yes, I'm a huge fan of boots. So once in a while, there's an issue with some of my unnamed brand boots where if I wear them, I'm going to be looking at a lot of blisters when I come home. But not when I wear my Brunt Marin waterproof boots. They're comfortable, durable, and I can walk anywhere with them. The Brunt Marin boot is fully waterproof, lightweight, slip and oil resistant, heat resistant, and electrical hazard rated. So yeah, it's awesome on the work sites. And you can finally have durable work boots, or in my case, walking boots, that are as comfortable as your sneakers. So join over 500,000 other customers and try your Brunt workwear boots on the job. If you don't like them, Brunt will take them back free of charge. You work too hard to be stuck in uncomfortable boots that don't hold up. So go get something better in Brunt. Boots that are insanely comfortable and built for any job site. For a limited time, our listeners are going to get $10 off their order at Brunt when you use code Julian, Julian, at checkout. Just head to bruntworkwear.com. That link is in my description below. Use code Julian at checkout and you're good to go. And after you order, Brunt's going to ask you where you heard about them. So please do me a favor and tell them Julian Dorey sent you. Why evolutionarily do so many of them have like almost no arms? Like we make the joke about like T-Rex arms, but it's a scary T-Rex and its arms are like in here as opposed to like a humans that are out here.
Well, some do, some don't. I mean, if you look at in that same group of dinosaurs that T-Rex is in called the theropods, look at something like a Therizinosaurus.
Therizinosaurus.
Yeah. Now, a Therizinosaur
sounds like a drug.
They could be like 17 feet tall, fully feathered, not a bird, but a fully feathered non-avian dinosaur. Yeah, look at like that middle picture. Big pot belly, and then they have like these meter-long Edward Scissorhands claws. So it's a nightmare, basically.
Whoa.
And so you can see some dinosaurs that were bipedal had very long arms. Others had very short arms. Now, in the case of T-Rex, people make fun of its little arms, like if you're happy and I'll never mind, or, T-Rex can't answer the phone and all this stuff.
Yeah.
Well, those tiny arms of T-Rex make its murderous bite possible. Because if you're going to have the strongest bite that any land animal has ever had, you need really big jaw muscles. And if you're going to have big jaw muscles, you need a big head to strap those jaw muscles onto, right? So you need a big skull. If you're going to have a really big skull, you need really big neck muscles to hold up your really big skull. And neck muscles and arm muscles compete for muscle attachment space on the shoulder girdle.
Whoa.
So you can't have both. So as its head got bigger, as its bite got stronger, its arms got littler to allow for that muscle attachment space. So the next time you make fun of its little tiny arms with the two little witchy fingers on it, think again, because that's what made its killer bite possible.
It automatically has it, whereas I got a deadlift to get this right here, pretty much.
Pretty much.
Wow.
Yeah.
Now, how did they go? I mean, obviously that story makes total sense, and we see where it ends up because we know a lot now, but evolutionarily, when they were first discovering like the T-Rex or something, which I don't even know when that is, maybe you can enlighten me.
1905.
1905
for T-Rex.
1905. Okay. What did they do to determine that story that you just explained scientifically? Is it just like deductive reasoning, or do they find other pieces of evidence that show like, oh, their shoulder muscle developed this way, or their traps developed, whatever they're called, develop this way over these 300 million years? How does it work?
Well, that particular story that I told is the work of my friend, Dr. Michael Habib in Los Angeles, who's a biomechanics genius, I would say. And so that's his hypothesis. But, when we look at dinosaurs, we mostly have their bones, although in some cases we have other parts that survive and we recover. And bones have muscle attachment scars on them. And from those muscle attachment scars, we can estimate the size and the power of certain muscles. And so it helps us reconstruct these creatures. It helps us reconstruct how they move. And it's also the bones are the primary defining features for us. And so, if we're in today's world, and we want to know, like, is this a species or is this a species? Well, we look to see who can produce viable offspring with each other. In the ancient world, we don't know that, right? We just don't have that evidence. And so the definition of a fossil species is that it has to be, you have to have a morphological definition of that species made by a competent paleontologist that can later be recognized by another competent paleontologist. And to define a new species, you have to find a feature in the skeleton or the fossil that hasn't been seen in any other animal that's closely related. We call these autapomorphies, but it's just a fancy name for a novel feature in the skeleton. You need at least one. It's maybe not great practice to define a new species based on just one. But when you assemble a group of them, then you have a clearly defined species that another paleontologist, maybe 100 years from now, could recognize if they find the same species.
It's like a constant building upon of peer review in a way over time.
Yeah.
Got it.
Yeah, and like in any science, paleontologists can be a quarrelsome lot. That's what we're supposed to do in science is we challenge each other, right?
That is correct. That's how it's supposed to be.
Yeah,
yes.
Because in science, what we say is if you listen closely, you will almost never hear a scientist say that they have proved something. We don't really use that term very much. What we say is that we have failed to falsify something.
Failed to falsify.
Yeah, and so you create a hypothesis, and then you try to poke holes first in your own hypothesis, and then you publish it, and you let all the other scientists try to poke holes in your hypothesis. And if it withstands all that, then we say we have failed to falsify that hypothesis, which means we have gained confidence in that hypothesis. Sometimes hypotheses become, they're tested so frequently and we have so much confidence in them that, historically some become laws, like the law of gravity, which is really just a hypothesis. Yeah. It's a prediction, but it's a prediction that's so good that people are willing to strap themselves to rockets and shoot themselves into space based on that hypothesis, right? And so that's essentially how science works. So nobody says, we've proven the law of gravity. You would say that we have immense confidence in Newton's gravitational formula because no one has ever falsified it.
I've had the privilege of having some pretty amazing scientists in here over the past, especially couple years. Started with Michio Kaku and eventually had in Brian Keating. And recently I had in Claudia Duram, who wrote what was a controversial paper on gravity back. She was working on this for years and years, but I think like when it really blew up was like 2018. And she, for one, was even saying like, oh, the gravity we know isn't everything, right? I found this, I'm going to state it all wrong, so go listen to episode 311. But, you know, she's like, or 310. I stated, I found that gravity is according to what Newton has, but there's a molecule or something that is also missing, and here's why it makes sense mathematically. And I bring this up because to me, the beauty and also madness of science is that literally the most brilliant people in the world are usually the people who are in that space. It's amazing what they're able to do. You can look through history, look at the Einsteins, look at the Newtons, go all the way back to Galileo and just see the pieces that they were able to put together that we could later build on. But the madness of it is that in a way, they're always figuring out the latest thing that can't be falsified so that someone else can build on top of that and eventually at least falsify a lot of it, if not all of it, to get to the next step that then follows that process to get all the way to eventually the top, which is trying to figure out the meaning of life and everything. And yet we will be able to look back on scientists who maybe objectively got most or all of what they discovered wrong as the people who actually trailblazed us to get to the answer. It's like this amazing catch-22 or paradox. Do you ever think about that with what you do in
it's
paleontology?
exactly right. When you if your work is falsified, you're making progress.
Yes.
Right? There's an example. There was a guy named Bishop Ussher. He was the primate of Ireland, which I learned is a religious title, not his simian origins, but he was.
We got to check that with YouTube monetization, just to be clear.
He was an archbishop in Ireland, and he decides this is in the 1600s, I believe. He decides he's going to figure out how old the Earth is, and he has no tools. Right? Geology hasn't been invented.
It hadn't been invented at all.
Not really. No. That comes around. James Hutton published his theory of the Earth at the very end of the 1700s. So we don't have geology. We obviously don't have any kind of lab tools to date rocks or anything like that. So he doesn't have much to work with. He's an archbishop, so he's got the Bible, right? So he does some historical research, and he figures out the date of King Nebuchadnezzar in the Bible. And so he's got a starting date there. And then he goes back through all the begots in the Bible, and so he works his way back through the generations, back to Adam and Eve, and he determines that the Earth was created in 4004 BC on October 23rd, around 6 p.m. On a Saturday.
Oh, we landed on the time, too.
Yeah.
Wow. Hey, guys, if you haven't already subscribed, please hit that subscribe button. It's a huge, huge help. Thank you.
Now, you can laugh at that, especially because it's absurdly specific, but what Ussher did was he created a testable hypothesis, right? And we have tested that hypothesis and we have falsified it. But it was a credible piece of scholarship, I think, and we falsified his hypothesis, and that's what we call progress.
Did he say how he got the time? Did he ever give a good answer?
I don't know how he got the time of the day.
God told me that was the time?
Not really sure.
God feels like a post-happy hour kind of guy, right?
Maybe.
That might be it.
Yeah.
We weren't drinking at 5 and creating the Earth. We waited till after everyone left the bar. That makes sense. No, but it's almost like an extreme example, but it's another great example of what I'm getting at.
And so, I mean, scientists are people, right? We have our time and our careers and maybe our egos invested into things, but
they have ego in science. They don't have
a few of them do. Yeah, not me personally, but some of them, and so this is hard to do, but the proper response of a scientist, if your idea is falsified, you say great, we've made progress.
Yes.
Right?
And it's the ultimate. Again, that's another paradox with human nature, because your ego's but does that mean I'm full of shit? Which is not the case, but that's how things will get painted. Oh, you were the guy that was wrong. But that's the whole point. You're supposed to try to explore the unexplored and figure out what that is. And I think we should celebrate that.
I said on, I think, the Discovery Channel 25 years ago, that we would never recover ancient molecules because of all these reasons why they would never survive. They would degrade over time. Well, we did.
We did. Can you explain that?
And I was wrong about that. And so, I'm a
Thank you for
scientist.
coming clean.
Well, scientists change their view when they get new information.
That's right.
That's what makes science different than politics. That's what makes science different than religion, right? I mean, how many times have you had a political argument with somebody where like you have like this killer fact and it doesn't change a thing, right? Or how often does an event happen in the world or a new discovery in the world, and how often does that change religion? It doesn't.
It doesn't.
Right? But it does science, because that's what science is, right? And that's what makes it different.
Yeah, and I wish everyone could think that way, because we've seen, you know, especially over the past couple decades, people from outside the space, I might add, in many cases, turn science into like the new religion and stuff like that. And the whole, again, it takes things and suddenly defines stuff as law, and then you're not questioning, you know, whether or not we can test something. And it exists across all elements of science. And I talk with all the guys I bring in here about it, because it's so counterintuitive to me. It's like we should constantly be testing questions. And if something is then proven is like, oh, that's not right, then great. We've made progress, just like you said.
Yeah.
So going back to dinosaurs, though, and we were talking about the fourth extinction when that happened. You might have mentioned this, but I just want to make sure we rehash it. What exactly caused the fourth extinction, where I think you said 95% of species were wiped out? Like
in the third, 95% of species. In the fourth, it was about 75, bad.
So this is like 250 million years ago, 255 million years ago?
The fourth was 200. The third was 255.
That's the one I wanted to ask about.
Yeah.
Let's start at the third. So what caused the third extinction?
Yeah, we call this the Great Dying. There's a couple things. There's a lot of things that are going wrong on the planet at this time. One is that people think, you know, a lot of people know the word Pangea, right? The supercontinent, and they think that that's how continents started. It's not how continents started. It just happens to be like a moment in time when all the continents happen to bump into each other.
Right.
Right. And so they were separate before, and there were different continents before. There were different oceans before. But at one point in time, all the continents bump into each other and we have Pangea. That's hard on life. Continental climates are extreme. Think about the middle of Siberia. It could be 100 degrees in the summer, and it could be, you know, minus 50 degrees in the winter, right?
Yeah.
So continental climates are extreme. And then when the continents are all together, all the organisms have to compete with all the other organisms. You know, some of the problems we have with invasive species today. Well, that's because an organism from over there is now competing with the organisms over here. But when the continents push all the organisms together, it's just hard on life. So we're in a rough time to begin with. And then these giant volcanic fissures in what is now Siberia open up and issue forth vast quantities of greenhouse gases. And we get into this like runaway greenhouse effect, and the planet just heats up
Everything
tremendously. And the combination of all those things is just too hard on life, and 95% of species perish.
Whoa.
Yeah.
And so we were pointing out that a lot of the species that perish include dinosaurs. And this was during the era where the dinosaurs were like cat-like size, you said?
Not yet. You've moved
Not
ahead
yet.
one.
I'm
Yeah.
ahead
We
one.
don't have dinosaurs yet.
That's why
during
you're
the Great
here, Ken.
Dying.
You got to keep me on order.
Yeah. So this is a world before dinosaurs. This is the end of the Paleozoic.
Okay.
So pre-dinosaur world. And this sets the stage for the dinosaurs.
Okay.
Have you ever seen those little cute fossils called trilobites? They're very common. You buy them in rock shops, and you can go on. You can find trilobites.
Maybe I've seen one. I just can't remember
Look on
the term.
Etsy, and you'll see
Okay.
like jewelry made of trilobites. But they go extinct at the end of the Paleozoic, and lots of other things too. There you go, trilobites. So they had a great
I've seen that.
great run across the Paleozoic, and then they can't hack it when this happens, and lots of other things go extinct as well.
Got it. But it set the stage for the dinosaurs.
It set the stage eventually for the dinosaurs. Kind of set the stage more for the crocodiles, and then the next one set the stage for the dinosaurs.
Okay, and the crocodiles, these are the ones that are bipedal you were talking about?
Some
that are
were.
running around?
There were other ones that, you know, were quadrupeds, but they were huge and scary, and yeah.
Now, how, like, because I've talked with some other people about this, about how we as humans look at time. And I was talking with Gnostic Informant about this. I don't know the exact term, but it's almost like there's an exponential correction that we do in our heads. And what I mean by that is we look at something that's attainable to look at, meaning like we have video of it, for example, of like the 1940s. And it seems very long ago. But then as we go farther, maybe we go 200 years back before that, we view that on a similar layer as we viewed the past 80 years. And then from 200 years, we look at the 600 years before that, and we view that like almost in the same time period, to the point that, you know, we could be talking about something that happened in 65 AD and compare it to something that happened in 168 AD, and in our heads we're like, oh, it's similar time, yet
Right.
it's like 5 generations apart,
Yeah.
and shit changed and everything.
Absolutely.
So when we're looking at evolution, I get caught in that trap all the time, because you almost like picture like, oh, just walked out of the water and boom, there it is. But how long after that extinction, like what was the process of the first crocodile forming, and how long did it take to grow to size?
You know, on a human time scale, it's an immense amount of time. I mean, you know, you think about events that happened here on Earth 1,000 years ago, and it seems so long ago.
But it's
right?
nothing.
But it's nothing geologically, right? 1,000 years is like, you know, 500 oak trees.
Right.
Right. So, you know, it's to us, to our perception, these things move at a rate that's not perceivable. Right. Geologically, you know, when you look at the whole fossil record, you can see things that look like they're happening very rapidly. But, you know, our senses are tuned for the here and now, right? Like we're very good at perceiving threats, food, and mates, right?
Yes.
We're not so good at perceiving things that unfold over years, definitely not decades. It's one of the reasons why people aren't, I think, as alarmed as we should be about the climate crisis and the biodiversity crisis. I mean, we go outside and today seems a lot like yesterday, you know, and this summer seems a lot like last summer, but it's not. We're just not built to perceive the kinds of changes that are happening in this world. And you know, what really scares me, like less than a year ago, the World Wildlife Fund issued a report, and now I'm talking in numbers of animals, not species. Since 1970,
Yes.
in terms of larger creatures, not insects or microbes, since 1970, 72% of wildlife has disappeared on the planet.
Crazy.
72%. How is that not on the front page of every newspaper every day?
Because people are still getting their Chick-fil-A and, you know, doing their thing
Right.
and going about their 9 to 5.
We're not perceiving it. But, you know, I notice it when I was starting my career, right? And I was a young paleontologist, and I'd go out to places like Wyoming in the summer, and I'd get a pickup truck and I'd drive across the state. I'd have to stop and squeegee the grasshoppers off my windshield about every 20 minutes because you couldn't see otherwise. I was out in Wyoming a couple summers ago and drove across the state. I don't think a bug hit my windshield.
Whoa.
That's bad.
Yeah.
That's bad. If the insects aren't thriving, nothing else is going to thrive. And you know, but these changes happen so slowly on a human time scale that we don't see them.
Yeah, and I think also the really unfortunate stuff that happens with this is we're so flawed as humans in the process as well, and so you'll get people to take advantage of these things and who don't really even give a shit about anything that's happening, and they'll try to say, well, more for me, less for you. And that's something like when you're trying to have a good conversation about, well, what is going on with our climate? What have we done since the Industrial Revolution that's affected our atmosphere and different aspects of like how this place works? You know, it ultimately comes back to, well, the buck's going to stop with either totally free corporations doing whatever they want or the government shutting everything down and telling every people what to do. And both extremes piss off a huge semblance of the population, no matter where you go. And we kind of live in this world where it flips back and forth like that. And so I worry that like we can't have these conversations because people either like completely say all true or all false, and you don't get anywhere with it because it's also like a lot of people out there who aren't scientists as well, and you know they're trying to make a decision on what that is. And I don't think that should be room for scientists to say, well, we're the only people that are allowed to talk about this, to be clear. But I also think like we have to get back to the like, well, what is the empirical evidence here? What has changed? What's something that's a part of, you know, just a phase of change that happens over time versus things that look permanent that we're doing that could be causing an extinction. And then somehow you got to start that conversation with people and, you know, think about 1,000 years from now, which is, as you've just laid out beautifully, it's very hard to get people to think about 1,000 seconds from now.
Yeah.
You know, now they're going to think about 1,000 years. It's tough, man.
Yeah. Well, you know, I mean, science is in economics. It's not economics, right? So we don't necessarily have the answers there. It's not politics. We don't necessarily have the answers there. But we have the data. And we know how the world works better than anyone. I mean, think about it. How does every single disaster movie start? With a scientist being ignored.
That's right.
Right? It's true.
It's very true. Or I Am Legend with a scientist telling everyone that we cured cancer.
So what we try to do at the Edelman Fossil Park and Museum is give people a deep time perspective and a deep space perspective. Because when you start to look at it that way, if you pull back and, in the Apollo 8 mission, the first one to go to the backside of the moon, astronaut Bill Anders took that famous Earthrise picture where you see the Earth rising up over the moon.
Yes.
Iconic picture. It's credited with really kicking off the environmental movement. But when you see the planet that way, there's no us and them, right? And there's no anywhere else either. Right. We live on this tiny little rocky lifeboat in space. And I try to get people to think. I gave a talk last night and, I asked the audience, like, imagine, there it is. Imagine you're adrift in a little lifeboat in the Pacific Ocean with like 4 or 5 other people. Like, how much are you going to care for that lifeboat? How much are you going to think about it? How much are you going to dote upon it? How quickly will you be to repair it? How much are you going to love that lifeboat? Well, you pull back into space and get that picture. That's our situation.
Right.
We live on this tiny little lonely lifeboat in space. And I'm sorry, Elon Musk, there's no planet B. We're not going to put 1 million people on Mars. You know why?
It'd be very cool, though.
Because Mars is terrible. No, we're going to go to Mars. We're going to plant the Explorers flag on Mars, the Explorers Club flag. But Mars doesn't have niceties like drinkable water and a breathable atmosphere and a magnetosphere to protect us from the sun's deadly radiation. We have an entire continent on Earth, Antarctica, that we don't even have a breeding population of humans on. I looked it up. There's been 11 babies born in Antarctica. 11. Yeah.
Were they born in the Nazi bunker that allegedly exists there?
I don't know about that.
Ooh, uh-oh.
But I have heard of
I've
heard of the McMurdo marriage, the Tarmac divorce. I think that probably relates to that.
I don't know what that is.
I think, there's a long winter in Antarctica, and so I think people, get busy.
It's an interesting point, though, because there are places that we can't even inhabit here, and we're trying to figure out how to do another planet.
Right.
I love the idea. Like, it's great to shoot for the moon.
Yes. But this is our home, and, we have this planet that we are exquisitely adapted to and for, and it suits all of our needs. It has everything we need, and why? Preserve this little lonely lifeboat that we have, because it's really all we're ever going to have him. And we're not going to send, a rocket ship to another star system and colonize that because we can. If you wanted to go, well, here, if you go to, if you want to send an intergenerational mission to, say, a planet going around Alpha Centauri or Beta Centauri, it's a little closer. Well, those people are going to leave Earth and never return, right? And so it's a multi-generational mission. How does speciation happen? It always happens in the presence of geographic separation, right? Go back to that biological definition of a species. It's a group of interbreeding organisms. When they get on that spaceship and they leave and they take their genes with them, never to mix with our genes again, at that moment, they're a different species.
That's so interesting.
So,
I never thought of it that way.
So, we could send another species to another star system, but it's not us anymore.
So I don't know. Maybe this will come back parallel. Maybe you can shoot me down and it's not. But you've seen the movie Interstellar?
Yeah.
Before? So technically Matthew McConaughey leaves the Earth. Only a certain, I forget what the exact time was, but only a certain amount of time in his life passes. Not a ton of time. But when he gets back to Earth, it's now been 80 years, right? So he was in a time warp. And so I've always looked at it if I'm just looking at it definitionally, the argument there is that he's actually an alien because he's returning to a place that he's never been to before, in a way, you know what I mean? Because his time didn't pass, but theirs did. And I think what you're getting at with the interspeciation and what a gene pool would do if it left here is a similar idea. It's like, yes, let's say there's men and women on that flight, right? And they go there and maybe they breed together in their new place. They are going to at some point be starting a new species there because it's a different environment, different adaptation happens. Maybe there's interbreeding with whatever's there. And now you get a whole new type of world.
Even just random genetic drift. I mean, their genome is just going to go to a place that ours are not, right? And so, eventually, given enough time, we wouldn't be able to breed with them, which makes us a different species.
And time could be 300 years or 300 million years. It's hard to say. But
it'd be more than 300. It'd be a long time.
It'd be a very long time.
But it would happen.
Because we started this conversation talking about how long it might have taken crocodiles to form into a crocodile after that third extinction. And it's like, again, this is where you get into hundreds of millions of years. It starts as a little bug or whatever in the post-apocalyptic world, and then eventually works his way up to this, what'd you say, 15-foot bipedal thing running through the woods? I mean...
Yeah. I mean, in the case of us vertebrates, we go back to a very particular lineage of essentially little wormy-like creatures that eventually develop, it's called a notochord. It's like a stiffened central nervous system, and then that eventually becomes ossified to form a spinal column, right? And then that's when we have vertebrates. And then so we wouldn't go from like a bug to a crocodile, but we go from these precursors of vertebrates through vertebrates to, all the creatures with bones that we have today.
Over a very long period of time.
Yeah, that's hundreds of millions of years.
Hundreds of millions of years.
Yeah.
So dinosaurs, going back to that, you said they were like apt to form during this period. This is when they form into like the cat-sized creatures. And how long was that period before the fourth extinction? Or fifth extinction, whichever one.
So dinosaurs formed near the end of the Triassic period. That's about 237 million years ago. And then really the dinosaurs kind of become what we think of as dinosaurs in the Jurassic period. That's when they become very biodiverse. That's when they start to conquer new lands. That's when they get really big. That's when we see the first giant dinosaurs.
What percentage of the planet of species do you think dinosaurs were at the time, based on all the other species that were there? Is it 40%? Is it 10%? Do we know?
Well, big creatures are never a large percentage of the species. Most species are bacteria. Right.
That was a dumb way of asking that. Excluding things like insects or very small things, as far as like in what we would now term like mammals or stuff like that. Like what percentage of larger animals?
Yeah, in terms of, let's call it macrofauna. Let's say that. A very high percentage. I mean, dinosaurs on land, right? Dinosaurs dominated the terrestrial ecosystems for the better part of 165 million years. Our ancestors, our little shrew-like mammals, we evolved first about 20 million years after the first dinosaur. So out of that 165 million year run, we're there for almost all of it, our mammalian ancestors.
Not humans, but the mammalian ancestors.
Your great-grandma was a little shrew-like creature back in the Mesozoic. They have a tough time competing with dinosaurs. So mammals, for the most part, they go nocturnal. They all stay small. They're living really in the hidden and forgotten recesses of the dinosaur world, hoping never to be noticed. That goes on for an unimaginable amount of time. And then the dinosaurs are wiped out in a cosmic accident, and the surviving little tiny mammals can now walk out under the blue sky, and they don't have the threat of dinosaurs anymore. And they quickly evolve into the mammalian fauna that we see today. It's not long before we see the first proto-primates. It's not long before we see proto-whales and the earliest artiodactyls, things with hooves. And, all of a sudden, think of an ecological niche as like a job description. And all of a sudden, like, the Great Depression comes, like all the jobs are just wiped off.
Yeah.
And now all of a sudden we're in an economic boom, and now there's all these unopened, these unfilled job positions, and mammals quickly evolve into all of those. And we have this burst of radiation. It's called evolution. It's called an adaptive radiation. And all of a sudden, it's the age of mammals.
Now, to go back for 1 second, though, because there were 3 official eras of dinosaurs before the asteroid hits. The second one is the Jurassic one, and you said that's the one where they start to get really big and the dinosaurs we recognize.
Yeah.
How did the Jurassic end, and what did dinosaurs look like on the other side of that for the third period? Did they kind of have to start over in size?
No,
or?
there's extinctions that happen at the end of the Jurassic that we use to define it, but they're more minor extinctions. It's not one of the big 5 mass extinctions, so it's not a huge cataclysm. These are more subtle changes that are happening, but enables paleontologists to know you're in the one period versus the next.
Okay, so
but it's not so earth shattering like the big 5.
But the species basically survive then in that case. So you might have a T-Rex in the Jurassic period, and you still have a T-Rex.
Well, T-Rex are only at the end of the Cretaceous period.
So I couldn't even get that right, damn it.
Species, generally, I mean, as a rule of thumb, high amount of variability in this, but as a rule of thumb, species persist about 1 million years before they turn into something else or maybe go extinct.
Where did the T-Rex come from? Let's unwind that one.
Asia.
Yeah, but where, like, what did it start as, or maybe not start as, but like what would we know it to have evolved from?
Well, first we have theropod dinosaurs, and these are among the earliest forms of dinosaurs. But then later, much later, there's a group of dinosaurs that we would call the Tyrannosauroids, which are, and there's over 24 of those known now. And it seems like the precursor of the North American tyrannosaurs came over from Asia. Asia was connected about where Alaska is to North America. And then T-Rex shows up right at the very end, evolves right at the end. So, dinosaurs lived at different times, but T-Rex happens to be alive when the meteor hit. It's found in Montana and Wyoming, but also Texas. And so there were probably T-Rex that saw the asteroid coming in and died that day. Triceratops was alive at the moment that the asteroid came in. Other things like, Allosaurus, Stegosaurus, Brontosaurus, they're Jurassic. They were not around for this event.
Oh, they were already gone. So they were killed in the previous extinction.
They're Jurassic. They not necessarily killed in extinction, but, species last for some time, and then they either turn into something else or they go extinct.
Was the T-Rex like the king of the jungle at that time, would you say?
T-Rex is, obviously the most famous dinosaur. It's not even close. And honestly, it's worthy of its extra measure of fame. T-Rex was huge. It was powerful. It was fast. It could smell really well. It could see you if you were moving or not moving. That's a Jurassic Park myth, right? So T-Rex is about the most badass thing that's ever walked on land.
What are some, Jurassic Park is obviously like a supernatural movie and all that. So I'm sure as a paleontologist, some of it makes you bang your head against the wall. But what are some themes there that they really did get right?
Well, so first, I love the Jurassic movies. I mean,
you do?
They're fun summer monster movies.
Good for you. I like that.
And like, if they inspire you, then go to the library and get a book about dinosaurs and learn something, right? But there's a whole generation of paleontologists a little younger than me that have their origin story with when Jurassic Park came out in 1993. And
that's cool.
So, and I'm sure every time one of those Jurassic movies comes out, there's a new batch of paleontologists that are born as a result. And, and geneticists as well, and probably all kinds of other scientists. So they're great, and they're fun, and I love them. They get a lot of the science wrong, but,
Is there stuff they get right?
Yeah, I think so. But there's some stuff that, like, you know how big a velociraptor skull is?
No.
It's about like that.
And they made it way bigger.
Way, way bigger.
Right.
So a velociraptor
they got to sell a movie though.
Is little. A velociraptor is more like a pissed off turkey.
Oh.
Right. Yeah. Like
turkeys will get you.
Well,
they run at you hard.
You could take a turkey, I'm sure.
You could take
it. You could take a velociraptor. If there's a velociraptor in your kitchen, it's more of an opportunity than a problem. You just like open up a can of cranberry sauce and preheat the oven and, yeah.
It's going to climb in.
Well, you'd have to do something. But, it's probably good eating. Probably tastes like chicken.
You telling me chickens are little velociraptors?
Well, chickens are dinosaurs.
Yeah,
so we literally know what dinosaur tastes like.
They are. I eat chicken every day, so I'm eating a dinosaur.
You're eating dinosaur. Yeah.
Wow.
Dinosaur flesh courses through your blood.
chickens are not the brightest though. Like
They are not.
yeah.
I have chickens. They're really dumb.
Oh, you have some
I have
yourself.
chickens.
Do you like cook them or?
No, they're pets. They
they're
have
pets.
names.
Oh, sorry.
They have names. We bury them when they die.
Oh,
Yeah. So,
sorry.
but they're dumb. They're really dumb. So we have, imagine we've got our deck is here, and then the chicken coop, and then the door to the chicken coop is on the far side. So I'll go out on the deck and I'll throw pizza crust in the backyard, and they can't figure out how to get to it, even if their door's open. They'll like bang their heads on the fence, and then they start to walk to their gate and they look around and they're like, but the pizza crust is getting smaller. Yeah. And then they run back to it, and it takes them it's like a Rubik's Cube. It takes them like 10 minutes to figure out that they have to go away from the pizza crust before they can get to the pizza crust. They are not smart animals.
Are they nice to you? Like, do you get to pet them or?
We've had chickens for a long time. I've only had one that like made friends with me because
if they were bigger, they'd probably eat you.
It remembered that I gave it some goldfish crackers on the deck, and then it would come up like every day looking for some goldfish crackers, and it would sleep next to me while I'm reading a book or something.
Yeah, they're nasty. I mean, you ever seen a cockfight?
No, I never have.
Listen, I've seen it in movies. That's enough for me.
That's actually the first time anyone's asked me that, but I've never seen it.
They can. It wasn't a pause, but still, like they can go at it. And I always think like they're like this big.
Oh yeah.
And we cook them all the time.
They're really mean to each other, especially if one of them gets injured and they see the red of the blood, like they will just attack that poor chicken. Yeah, you can see.
It's like the fucking Hunger Games out there.
You can see. I made a slow motion film of our chickens running across our front yard, and I put the Jurassic Park music in. It's on my Instagram feed, and they're dinosaurs. I mean, you can see it when you see these chickens in slow mo going across our front yard.
Yeah,
dinosaurs.
They look like
it's
a
pack of
raptor
dinosaurs
in a way. That's crazy.
Yeah.
So, were there any dinosaurs? Let's look at the Jurassic period. Were there any dinosaurs that we can use science to determine, I don't know, by brain size or things that we find that you would characterize as very intelligent?
Well, yeah. I mean, we have some alive today. Crows are super smart. Parrots are super smart.
Pigeons
are pretty smart.
Yeah.
They certainly have an unbelievable sense of direction.
I have an ongoing feud with my buddy Mark Gagnon. He thinks pigeons are like not smart at all, but I'm like, they're a top 10 smart animal.
No,
pigeons will literally crip walk out here. It's crazy. They're like going side to side. Very cool.
Yeah, no, they're remarkable animals, really.
Yeah, so they're a dinosaur.
Yep, pigeons are dinosaurs. A ruby-throated hummingbird is a dinosaur. A flamingo is a dinosaur. Mosasaur is not a dinosaur. Plesiosaur is not a dinosaur. Pterodactyl's not a dinosaur.
When did the pterodactyl go extinct at the asteroid too?
Pterosaurs did, yeah, the larger group. Yeah.
So they're not dinosaurs. Mm-hmm. What did we characterize them as again?
Well, they don't have like a very marketable name. They're in a group called the Pterosauroidea, and then they have Ornithodyra is the bigger group that they're in. So dinosaurs and pterosaurs are united in a group called Ornithodyra.
Ornithodyra,
yes,
and there's nothing that still exists of that.
Birds. Birds aren't pterosaurs, but the group Ornithodyra includes all dinosaurs and the pterosaurs.
Wait, hold on. Back that up. I got to make sure I went in my brain right. Say that again, if you don't mind.
So you can unite any two creatures in a larger group.
Yeah.
Right? Like us and an earthworm are in the really big group called Animalia. Right? We're both animals. So any two creatures are in some group together. So the group that pterosaurs and dinosaurs are both in is called Ornithodyra.
Okay. So it's a part of a larger tent.
Yeah,
so
that's the larger tent.
We can trace birds to them, but birds are traced to both. But at the top of that tent where you have the Ornithodyra and the dinosaurs, the Ornithodyra were totally separate from the dinosaurs and cannot be traced.
Well, think of, here's the dinosaurs, here's the pterosaurs.
Yep.
Right. This is Ornithodyra. And then dinosaurs branch, and there's lots of branches here, right?
Got it.
So Dinosaurville here, pterosaur land here.
Understood.
Right.
Okay. Now, what other, large species, maybe we can actually talk about what you already hinted at earlier with what was going on in the seas back then, but during the Jurassic period, what other large species besides dinosaurs were existing and thriving?
Well, on land, there's not anything else that's really big besides dinosaurs. And then in the ocean, at various times, large marine reptiles have evolve. But again, they're not dinosaurs. But, plesiosaurs, and which are like whale-sized creatures. They look like the non-existent Loch Ness monster.
The plesiosaurs. Can we pull this up?
Yeah.
Let's see this.
Yeah.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Yeah, let's pull that first one, Joe. Top left. So that's a plesiosaur. Plesiosaur right there.
Yeah. So there. Yeah.
Whoa.
Yeah. So those are really scary sea monsters, and they were real. And then the mosasaur.
Where did we find their fossils? Did we find any of that like on land because it used to be where sea is, or?
That's right. We find them in marine deposits that are on land now.
Got it.
And so originally they were found in Northern Europe, like in the Netherlands, and in southern England. Yeah, in the Dorset coast is a great place for that. Pull up the mosasaur, the Mosasaurus. That is the all-time apex predator ever of the oceans.
How big are we talking?
They could get to be like 55 feet long.
Oh, fuck that.
So there you go. That second picture is a good one there.
It's like a killer whale meets a great white meets a T-Rex of the sea.
Yeah, I mean, so they're 55 feet long. You know what a Komodo dragon is?
Yes.
It's a marine Komodo dragon, essentially. Yeah.
You ever seen those things eat a goat?
Oh, yeah, they're monsters.
Yeah.
So imagine a marine
Joe's
Komodo
getting
dragon.
some post-traumatic stress back here.
As long as a school bus, paddles for limbs, 6-foot jaw, and then they have a second set of teeth at the top of their throat that points backwards to keep you from swimming back out. You might be able to see it.
I hope you're just dead before you get there. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like they already get you. You're dead. I'm not trying to swim back out.
Yeah.
Whoa. Is that it? Is eating supposedly like a great white shark?
Well, they didn't
Like
exist
for
then,
but
there
for
were
size comparison,
lots of big sharks. I don't know if you can see those back of the throat teeth. They're called the pterygoid jaws. So, look, the upper left-hand picture shows those extra set of teeth in the mouth.
That's a dragon of the water.
Yeah, right there. If you zoom into the mouth, you'll see those extra teeth.
All right, let's see how close we can get there, Joe. Oh, yeah, I can kind of see it already, but I don't know if people out there can see it. It's in the back. You're saying it's like, yeah. Whoa.
So maybe my favorite fossil that we found at the fossil park is we found one of those pterygoid jaws with all the teeth in it. And what's amazing about our location, so again, the fossil park site was underwater in the Cretaceous period. In our second gallery called Monstrous Seas, everything in that gallery was found on the property in a layer that goes about 65 feet under your feet where you'll be standing there. And these creatures lived here. So when you see our giant Mosasaurus, if you can pull that up, if you search for
like the word
Edelman
Moses,
Fossil Park, and
Moses,
Mosasaur.
and then Aris on the end. Is that why they named it that?
No,
because no. Okay.
You'll see a 55-foot long Mosasaur, and like in the fullness of time, it's nearly a statistical certainty that a Mosasaur of that size was in that position, right where you see it in the museum today. Yeah, there's our Mosasaurus.
Oh, that's yours right there.
Yeah, that's the museum.
Whoa.
Now
that's actual size.
Actual size, and there was almost certainly one right there. 66 million years ago. So we have an amazing paleo artist that did over 50 full-scale reconstructions for us like this. It took him in his studio outside Kansas City more than 3 years.
He's a paleo artist?
Paleo artist. His name is Gary Staab, S-T-A-A-B. Wow. He's the world's greatest paleo artist. He used to win the National Geographic Paleo Art Award every year until finally they made him a judge so somebody else could win.
Whoa.
So he does an unbelievable amount of research.
How does he go? I mean, this is such a broad question, but how does he go about doing that? Like he gets maybe not even a full set of bones, but he gets enough to have an idea of a structure. And then, I mean, how accurate is it, I guess, is the question.
It's as accurate as it can be.
As it can be.
So Gary first starts with a tremendous amount of research. And, he would never call himself a scientist, but he's a damn good scientist. And he has an unbelievable breadth of anatomical knowledge. And so he starts with that, and then he will make a 1/10 scale clay maquette of that. And we iterate on that to get the pose right and everything. And then he scans that, and he uses a CNC machine to cut about 8-inch foam slices. And you can imagine how many there would be in a creature
lot.
like this. Glues them all together, and then puts resin or something on the outside, and then starts to sculpt all the scales. And he'll say, you start at the tail, and then a couple 100,000 scales later, you're done. He makes the eyes himself, he makes the teeth himself, and then he paints the whole thing. He puts in pathologies and scars and things like that.
That's amazing.
And they're unbelievably lifelike.
That's amazing. I got to come visit this.
You have to.
This is so cool.
To.
I can't believe this was right there.
Right there.
The whole time.
It's behind the Chick-fil-A.
I know. God damn it. He's like, yeah, there's a massage parlor in the back.
That's not true.
Wow. So this would have been swimming.
Yes.
Right approximately where it is.
And you would have been dying.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, take me back to that first day when you guys found something there. Because you've been doing this all your life. I do want to come back to like how you even got into this as a kid. We'll get there. But like, what was found, and did you have like the Dr. House moment where you just like look up and you're like, holy shit?
I didn't. I've had that moment elsewhere in the world.
Oh, you have? All right, we'll get there.
I have. But here, it was like a muddy pit that was being mined for marl sand. When they were mining it, it was always kind of a jumble. And I didn't think much of it. This is back in 2003. And I thought, well, I could bring my students here. They could find some fossils. That'll be cute. And then I'll go everywhere else in the world to do my research, So it wasn't until, as I said before, when the quarry owner told me that they were going to go out of business, that I managed to secure a corner of the quarry. And when we started to excavate methodically, then I started to see what we had there and its scientific importance. And then I knew I had to find a way to save the site.
Right. But so when you started to figure out, maybe the question isn't the first moment there, but when you started to figure out, like, oh my God, we just found a dinosaur bone there. You gotta be thinking, oh my God, I grew up in Linwood, New Jersey. This is like 50 miles from where I grew up, and this is where it happened, right?
Well, it didn't surprise me to find a dinosaur bone there, because people don't know this, but southern New Jersey is like the cradle of dinosaur paleontology.
And you knew that before all this.
I knew that, yeah. So dinosaurs were first recognized from really scrappy remains in England. And so in the early part of the 19th century, bones start turning up about an hour south of London in the Tilgate Forest and other places. They can't really tell what they are because the remains are so scrappy. And that's how they get the name dinosaur. In 1841, a British anatomist, Richard Owens, gives them that name. He buries it on like page 240 of the Mesozoic reptiles of Great Britain, because he doesn't even think it's important. And he says there's a new tribe of crocodile lizards, is what he calls them, and he gives them the name dinosaur, which means terrible lizard. So he thinks they're just these big puffed up lizards. If you look at the Crystal Palace dinosaurs, these are the first reconstructions of dinosaurs made for a big exposition in Great Britain in the mid 1800s, and they look like monsters, right? They don't really know what they are. So
dinosaurs do look like when you look at them, it's like what you think was going to come out from under your bed.
Not good monsters.
Oh,
they're not
not the fun kind.
Not the fun,
right?
Just like kind of gross monsters.
You said it was Crystal Palace.
Crystal Palace dinosaurs.
Crystal Palace dinosaurs.
Yeah, that's 1841, and then in 1858. The world's first nearly complete dinosaur skeleton is found. Yeah, they still exist in a park south of London. Those sculptures.
Oh, I didn't realize. They're full sculptures.
They're sculptures,
okay.
Yeah, by a guy named Benjamin Waterhouse Hawkins.
Yeah, they look like giant iguanas.
Yeah, in fact, one of them is called Iguanodon.
Yeah, that makes sense. Okay.
Yeah. So that was
1858.
And look how like brutish and primitive they look. So that's our first conception of dinosaurs. 1851. And then in 1858, the world's first nearly complete dinosaur skeleton is found. It's called Hadrosaurus, and it looks like dinosaur. And we get our current image, like the first iteration of that, of what dinosaurs are really like. And that's found in Haddonfield, New Jersey.
Come on.
In 1858.
That's not why they named it Hadrosaurus, right?
It is. I mean, in the paper, he says it's the Greek hadro, which means bulky, so it's bulky lizard, but really it's got to be a double entendre, right?
All right, so Hadrosaurus, what period did they exist in? Jurassic?
Late Cretaceous.
Late Cretaceous.
Yeah.
So similar
Near
to
the end there were,
T-Rex.
Yes, similar to T-Rex.
Got it. How big were these things?
They were big. Well, you see the human for scale there. I mean, they're elephant-sized. Yeah, maybe a little bigger, really. So world's first nearly complete dinosaur skeleton found in southern New Jersey in 1858. And then, as we spoke of, everybody knows T-Rex, but T-Rex isn't the only tyrannosaur. There are over 24 types of tyrannosaur. T-Rex isn't the first discovered. The first discovered tyrannosaur is found in Mantua Township, South Jersey in 1866.
Come on.
It's a dinosaur called Dryptosaurus.
Ken, why were you not just, like, before you even found this land, why were you not out there with, like, a dinosaur detector? You know, like they have the gold detectors? If I were you, I would have been out there every day waiting for a beep going, got one.
I don't have a dinosaur detector.
All right.
Actually,
well, we should have gotten you one.
It's called a shovel.
Right. Yeah, I would have been out there with my shovel. Because if I knew that they had found that kind of history there, I'm like, there's got to be more.
Yeah, so there's Dryptosaurus. And
do we have the history, Joe? Hold on. Go back to discovery and species, if you don't mind. All right. So up until 1866, theropods from the Americas were only known from isolated teeth discovered by Ferdinand van Hayden during geological survey excursions in Montana. During the summer of 1866, workers from the West Jersey Marl Company uncovered an incomplete theropod skeleton in a quarry near Barnesboro, New Jersey, by the Barnesboro Inn, probably, right?
Yep.
With sediments belonging to the Maastrichtian-aged New Egypt Formation in August 1866.
That's a little bit wrong, but yeah.
What's wrong? Well,
I wouldn't call it I would call it the Hornerstown Formation, or actually, no, that's the Navesink Formation. There. But it's the Maastrichtian period.
And then August 1866, paleontologist Edward Drinker Cope. What a name.
I used to have his job.
You had his job?
At the Academy of Natural Sciences.
Wow.
Yeah.
You got a resume.
Edward Drinker Cope, by the way, didn't drink, which is a little disappointing.
I know.
Yeah.
Is he teetotaler?
Yeah.
That's unfortunate. All right. When he arrived, he was thoroughly surprised by the skeleton's completeness and uniqueness, calling it the finest discovery I've yet made. The skeleton was then deposited, there it is, at the Academy of Natural Sciences in Philadelphia under the catalog number, whatever that is. Wow.
Yeah. Yeah, lots of other new species. A new species of mosasaur was discovered in Swedesboro, southern New Jersey. Other dinosaurs found in, the Mill Pond in Mullica Hill where you used to live. Dinosaurs found there. There was something like a Gallimimus found there. So there's this swath of Cretaceous that outcrops from about Freehold, New Jersey, Springsteen land.
Yeah.
Comes down through Cherry Hill, through Mullica Hill, goes kind of out past like Salem, and then goes
it's going down 322.
Yeah, basically, and then like down I-95.
Oh my God!
So if you live on that stuff, there's a good chance you could find dinosaurs.
I mean, to me, when you say something like that, that is akin. I'm not even just thinking about the wonder of like the science. Just look at it monetarily. That's akin to like having a gold mine down there. I mean, this stuff's got to be worth.
Well, I guess if you sold them, I've never sold a fossil in my life, and never will. No, never.
Not once.
Not one.
Not even on like Craigslist.
Nope.
Okay.
No, and never will.
Okay.
I bought a few, but I won't.
Oh,
sell
you bought
them.
a few.
A few like small things that I needed for teaching or something. But,
okay.
The commercial trade in fossils is very harmful to paleontology. Because what happens? Well, when I started my career, and I would go out to places like Montana and Wyoming. I'd pull up on a ranch, and I'd find the rancher, and I'd say, hey, I'm a paleontologist. Do you mind if I poke around? I'm looking for fossils. And they'd be like, yeah, sure, go ahead. We don't care.
In Jersey, that would have been like, fuck off.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah. And then you've heard of the T-Rex named Sue, right? It's at the Field Museum now. It's a huge controversy. It's a sordid tale. But
someone, Elizabeth Weiss, I think, was talking about that when she was in here. Yeah.
But there was, it's a whole big story. But eventually, McDonald's bought Sue for $8 million. They thought they were doing something good and donated it to the Field Museum. Well, guess what? That set the market.
Oh, no.
And now every rancher who lives on, dinosaur age material thinks they've got their retirement sitting, underground. So now you walk up to a rancher and they're like, you can't do it. You can't get on the property. And then commercial collectors go out and they dig up dinosaurs and they auction them off at, Christie's and Barclays and for tens of millions of dollars.
Here's the thing. Let's look at two things that are found that are considered incredible economic opportunities. You got gold and you got oil. Those are just two. Gold, we put on jewelry. It's like a fashion symbol, a lot of other things as well. It's a store of value. Oil is obviously something that helps run the world. So you're on oil, you can sell that. But shouldn't there be some sort of, I don't know, like public interest protection on history per se?
There should be, and there are laws like that in most countries. So where I worked in Argentina for so many years, it doesn't matter if it's on public or private land. When you put your finger on a dinosaur fossil, it becomes property of the federal government of Argentina at that moment.
Here's the thing. I'm not even saying it has to be property of the government, but it should be in the interest of something that's not economic, like protectionism. You know what I mean? Meaning, if there's history to be uncovered, there are people like you, a professional, should be allowed to come in, and there should be a law that says you're allowed to come in to excavate that. And then let's say you're not allowed to make money on the private market from that. That would be perfectly fair to me.
I agree. And the one of the problems with private collecting is that, it's driven by money, and so they're interested in getting that bone that skeleton out of the ground as quickly as possible. When I'm excavating a dinosaur, I spend as much time on the sediment that surrounds the dinosaur as I do on the fossils themselves, because the sediment preserves the paleo environment.
The paleo environment?
Yeah. So, was it a floodplain? Was it a coast? Was it a mangrove ecosystem? Imagine if you were an alien and you came by Earth and you beamed up a lion, but you didn't know anything about the African savanna. What do you know about a lion?
It's just a thing in space.
You know nothing, really, right? So you pluck these dinosaur skeletons from the ground. You don't do the paleo environmental work. You don't really know anything about these animals. That's where the story is.
Yes. You're basically able to paint the context and setting by doing that, essentially.
Yeah, and you start to understand the ecology and and the climate and all kinds of other things. So it's really, I excavate so methodically. 17 years to go 250 square meters.
250 meters in 17 years.
Yeah. So
what is it? Just for the layman out there, which is me. What does that look like? Like, are you going in there and each day you have a specific, like, I'm going to get through these 2 inches and here's
Well, we grid it out in 1 meter squares. Some of my excavators that have been trained on the team, are more experienced and can go faster than others. Some people might spend weeks on a single square meter.
Yeah.
And we work with, we'll go through with I like to use a flathead screwdriver with my thumb on top and just kind of go through by feel. And, and then we'll use like a putty knife and paintbrushes and dental picks.
Whoa.
And it's meticulous work. Now that's for the kinds of deposits we have at the fossil park. It's different. Like where I work in Patagonia, the way I prospect is with a pickaxe. And
with a pickaxe.
Yeah, and a pickaxe is a skill. Like I would have to teach my grad students like the proper way to swing a pickaxe. It's like swinging a baseball bat. There's a whole form that goes into it, right? And the way you prospect with a pickaxe is by sound. So when you're hitting the rock, it sounds one way. If you hit a fossil, it rings a little bit. And if you're good, you only hit the dinosaur once.
That's what I would think. Like something like that sounds like a risk of damaging a bone or something.
Well, that's why they make a product called Paleobond.
Paleobond,
made just for us paleontologists.
So how does that work?
It's basically super glue. Every now and then you break a fossil and you glue it back together.
Now you spent a lot of time down in Argentina. You said you were living down there at one point?
I lived cumulatively, I spent more than a year living in a tent in Argentina.
In a tent?
Yeah.
In Patagonia?
Yeah. Southernmost Patagonia, outside a little town called El Calafate. It's very far south.
Now, over what time period were you doing this?
My first expedition down there was 2004, and I ran expeditions there 2004, 5, 6, 7, and 9.
What drew you to that area?
Well, I had been working in the Sahara Desert of Egypt in a very lonely place called the Bahariya Oasis, which is basically nowhere. It's halfway between the Mediterranean and Sudan, halfway between the Nile and Libya. And I'd gone there with a team of colleagues from the University of Pennsylvania, and we were endeavoring to find what were known as the lost dinosaurs of Egypt. There were 4 species of dinosaurs that were found around 1911 by a German paleontologist named Ernst Stromer von Reichenbach. And he excavated these fossils.
Soldier.
He seems like he was a good guy, actually.
Okay. He was early enough.
He eventually got these fossils to the Bavarian Museum of Paleontology in Munich, and they were on display there for decades. And then in April of 1944, they were bombed by a British air raid, and the museum and those fossils were destroyed. Now, most dinosaur species are known from a single specimen, so the species were gone to science.
Man.
And they became known as the lost dinosaurs of Egypt. So for decades, paleontologists tried to get back in there. They would write the authorities in Cairo, never get a response. In the 80s, they would fax. In the 90s, they would email, and nobody ever got a response. And then me and this group from UPenn, we got some money from a film company to go find the lost dinosaurs of Egypt.
A film company?
Yeah.
Like a Hollywood film company?
Yeah. There's a 2-hour documentary that was on A&E called The Lost Dinosaurs of Egypt. And it was actually in part funded by Julian, Carl Sagan's widow, who Carl Sagan was like my hero.
That might be in the title of this episode, just to let you know. It's pretty fire. Lost Dinosaurs of Egypt.
Yeah.
People are clicking
well, that's old news for me, though. But, so we don't get an answer either, but we've got the money, and so we figure, well, screw it, we're just going to go. So we go to Egypt, we find the head dude's office, we sit in his lobby for 4 days, smile politely and drink tea. I was never more caffeinated while he walks in and out, completely ignoring us, and then finally he stops and signs our desert permits just to get us the hell out of his office. Previous to that, I had worked with the family of that old paleontologist, Ernst Stromer, and I had access to his field journals and his maps.
Did he have pictures of this stuff though too? I would
Illustrations.
Imagine?
Well, he had some photographs that I found later in the museum.
Because it's destroyed in 1944, so I imagine someone took a picture in the museum, right?
Yeah, I found them in the attic of the museum, actually. There's some photographs.
Okay.
If you look up Stromer's Spinosaurus photograph, you might find it.
Because that at least gives you something to work with. You can see the outline.
Well, we had his technical papers, so we had a pretty good idea of what it would have looked like. So we go there. Those pictures there, I found those photos in the museum that you see published there.
And that's the Spinosaurus in question right there from Egypt?
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, maybe they built the pyramids.
Probably not.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah.
I can hope, though. You know.
So I find Stromer's Spinosaurus quarry, and I find 100-year-old German newsprint, like things don't, degrade too much in the desert. I find sardine cans. I find burlap. I find plaster. He doesn't leave a single bone behind. But in the course of prospecting in the Bahariya Oasis, we find a new species of dinosaur that we named Paralititan. We publish it in 2001. At the time, it's the world's second largest dinosaur.
Paralititan.
Paralititan means tidal giant. The geology that I did there showed that Paralititan lived in a tidal mangrove forest very far from the mainland. So this is the first mangrove living dinosaur that we knew about.
Is that it?
Sort of, yeah.
Did you come up with the name yourself, or the team did?
I did, yeah.
So you've named a few dinosaurs.
I have named a few, yeah. So that's 2001, early in 2001, and then 9/11 happens. And now it doesn't look like we're going back to Egypt. And there was actually some terrorist activity in the Bahariya Oasis. Yeah. And so I set my sights on southernmost Patagonia because it's a place I can see that has rocks of the right age. They're sedimentary rocks, so you can form fossils. And there's vast exposures of those rocks, like badlands. Imagine the badlands of South Dakota, times 25. Right.
Whoa.
And better yet, no paleontologist had really worked within about 1,000 kilometers of that site, which means you have a very good probability of finding new species if you're finding stuff there. So like perfect conditions for me.
You lived in a tent, you said.
Yeah, yeah. So I get down there. The first field season is really rough.
Yeah.
There's a dirt road that I have to travel on 4 hours outside of town. And then I don't have any way to get across this river. There's no bridge. So I have to raft across this roaring glacial stream every time I want to get to the site or every time I want to go back to town for supplies. We find some huge bones that year, but I have no way to get them out of the desert. So I hire a couple of gauchos and their horses, and we cover these bones in burlap and plaster to protect them. And then I got this piece of corrugated metal, and we make a sled out of it, and we pad it out with prairie grass, and we strap the bones to it, and the gauchos drag the bones with their horses out of the desert that way. And that was our first field season.
It's a movie. That's a movie.
It's a wild sight. The wind in Patagonia is ferocious. Like you can't keep bees in Patagonia because they just go away.
Yeah.
And there were always scorpions under my tent. There were oftentimes puma tracks outside my tent in the morning. I was just going
to bring up pumas. They roam that land like crazy.
Yeah, they're very shy though. The gauchos have hunted them mercilessly. So
they don't come after you at all?
No. I've saw tracks many times. I never saw a puma itself.
Yeah, I was watching. I love those Netflix documentaries like Our Planet and all that. So I'll sit up at night watching that. But I was watching an episode on the pumas down in Patagonia. Patagonia is such a strange landscape because, you picture, I don't know, something more simple like a desert, like the Sahara. It's just a lot of dirt and it's hot and everything. And then Patagonia has these valleys and then roaming hills, and it's got some vegetation.
It's so beautiful.
It's amazing.
If you just search my name in Patagonia, you'll probably see a bunch of pictures.
What a flex. Just search my name.
Sorry.
I'm like Mr. Patagonia. I'm the mayor, actually. There we go.
Yeah, there's probably some landscape picture. Well, that fourth one is me laying next to a big bone of Dreadnoughtus there in the field.
We're going to talk about that. That's the one that we found. Quick question. I always talk with like some of my authors that I bring on about this. I actually had David Gran in here recently who wrote Killers of the Flower Moon, which later became that Scorsese movie, and he wrote Lost City of Z before that. He writes stories a lot of times that take place in wild, exotic places. And the latest one he wrote was called The Wager, which is about basically like a Lord of the Flies type situation in the 18th century down in this area of the world. And so one of the things I love about David and a lot of great authors is they go to these places and they live in it for a while. Yeah. And as like the true kind of Hemingway model, they'll walk through it and they will feel the stories of the people around them that were there sometimes, 500 years before, 1,000 years before, whatever it is, and start to get that emotion of the setting. Do you get that when you're digging for, in this case, something that's hundreds of millions of years old? Like, do you have a similar type of, like, you can almost see the dinosaurs around you, what it might have looked like?
I do. I think most geologists and most paleontologists have like 1 foot in today and 1 foot in the ancient past. And, when I'm walking in a forest, when I'm driving around, when I'm at a place like my field site in Patagonia, I'm not always here. Mm-hmm. I'm oftentimes back then. Yeah. Right. And I can see in my mind's eye what it would have been like. And, and it's when I fly, I always want the window seat, of course. And I'm just imagining the past Earths that we're flying over. And, you can see that when you know the history. Right. Yes. So for me, it's it's an emotional, it's maybe akin to a spiritual sometimes feeling. It's very sublime. My best moment in the field, which I am sure I will never top. This is like peak Dreadnoughtus, right? So we have most of this enormous skeleton exposed. It's an unbelievable find. I never thought I would see a site like this in my life, right? So this is exposed. There's an aperiodic comet that comes through. So not like Halley's Comet that we can expect every 76 years. This is one that we didn't know about, right? And we definitely didn't know about it because we're incommunicado. We're out there in the field. And this one was only visible from the southern hemisphere. It was called Comet McNaught. So we don't know what's coming, but we see this little fuzzy thing in the night sky, and then the next night it's changed position, and I'm watching this thing, and then the tail starts to grow, and then pretty soon this huge naked eye, comet with a huge tail. And I remember one night I'd sent the grad students down, and they were starting to gather firewood and get dinner ready. And I'm sitting there, and I've got a bottle of Jameson whiskey, and I'm sitting on a rock, and I'm looking at this gargantuan dinosaur skeleton with this giant comet hanging over it. And I thought, man, it's just never going to get any better than this.
Whoa.
Yeah.
I felt that.
Yeah.
I feel like I was there with you.
Yeah.
That's so cool. Now, this Dreadnoughtus, though, we keep talking about this.
Yeah.
How did you first, I mean, we saw even one element of the picture there with you with a huge bone. This is obviously a dinosaur that once you discovered it, you were able to name it. We can get into that. But what was the first moment where you thought, ooh, we might be tapping on something new? And then what was the first moment where you're like, okay, this is definitely something we haven't seen before?
Yeah. So the first thing I saw was about a tea saucer size area of bone. It turned out to be part of the femur, the largest bone in the body. When you're prospecting for dinosaurs, a lot of people think we just dig a hole and hope to get lucky. That would almost never happen.
Right.
So what you do is you get yourself in the right geological situation, and you just walk until you see a bone sticking out of the rock. And so I saw a little bit of this femur. We start to uncover it. At the surface, it's usually pretty easy to uncover it because the sediment on top is weathered. So pretty soon we have this, more than 6 foot long femur. And the year before we found a 7 foot long femur, but it was isolated. So I'm thinking like, okay, here we go again, another isolated bone. But pretty soon we dig a little bit more. There's the tibia, there's the fibula, there's some back vertebrae, dorsal vertebrae. And by the end of the first day, we have 10 bones exposed. Now these.
Oh, you did that in one day?
Yeah, because the sediment is so soft on the top. For these big sauropod dinosaurs, so the long neck, long tail quadrupeds, think Brontosaurus for shorthand, right? Yeah. They're called the sauropods. Their skeletons are usually the most fragmentary, because imagine you're the size of a house, right? And you fall over on something like a floodplain. At that moment, very little of your body is in contact with the earth. So very little of your skeleton has a chance to make that transition from the biosphere to the geosphere before it's scavenged away or weathered away. And so a lot of times you find a sauropod dinosaur and it's, 1, 2, or 3 bones. So already we have 10 bones. Already we have a really great result. And then we start to dig deeper. As you go deeper, the rock is less weathered, so it becomes harder and harder until it's like concrete, and we're using pickaxes, which is, almost all the rest of our time. Yeah. And by the end of it, by the end of 5 field seasons, we have 145 bones of this giant creature. 16 tons of fossils. This is what we took out of the desert
16 tons.
16 tons. We get it eventually into a shipping container. It takes me 3.5 years to work out the export permits for the government of Argentina. That was a nightmare, a real nightmare. I remember finally, I get the permits. I have to pay for the customs officer to come to this estancia to watch us load the bones, and he's doing all his paperwork.
You couldn't pay someone off, Ken. You're from New Jersey. Come on. I could have sent a couple guys down there. We'd have this done no problem.
I've shamed my state, I know. And then we get down to the port, and this guy starts taking little pieces of the plaster jacket, right? And then he takes me in the little room, and he's got the pieces of plaster, and he puts it in a tube, and he shakes it up, and he says, "No cocaine," and he shakes it up, "No heroin." And he thinks this is funny. I don't think this is very funny. I've got a 17-month-old boy at home at this point. I do not think this is very funny. And then they send a drug dog through the container, and the drug dog was apparently a high-ranking dog because he had the vest and lots of patches, and I'm thinking at this point, it's been 5 years. I've spent all my research money. I've lived in a tent for more than a year, and now it comes down to the opinion of the dog.
Right.
But the dog was good. We got 2 paws up.
This is kind of like a genius drug running operation, though. If you wanted to, imagine that you could just if the cartels are out there listening, not to give you guys a new idea, but you could just get some drugs into dinosaur bones, get it out of the country. And
well, apparently they thought of that, which is why they had the dogs in there. So, and then they tell me I need an insurance policy.
Oh.
So I'm in this little dusty town called Rio Gallegos. I'm in a phone booth. There's literally wild dogs trying to get into the phone booth. And I'm on the phone calling Lloyd's of London.
Oh my God.
Lloyd's of London has heard everything, right?
Yeah.
So somebody answers the phone. I say, I need an insurance policy on a dinosaur. And he says, for how much? You know?
How do you even put a price on that, though?
I can't. I put the price of
2,204 million.
I didn't want to pay that much for insurance. So basically, I told him $25,000, which is like, well,
25,000. How big was this dinosaur again? You saw 16 tons of bone?
If this dinosaur was ever put on the market for auction, and it never will be, it'd be probably $100 million.
25 grand.
Well, I mean, it's not like I could go out and buy a replacement, and I didn't want to pay a lot for insurance. So
I got you.
Told him $25,000.
I got you.
So then I finally get the dinosaur up to my lab in Philadelphia. It's too much material for any one lab to process. So I keep a third in my lab, and I send a third to another museum, a third to another museum, and we have like 100 volunteers working on these fossils day and night for a couple of years to carefully unopen those jackets and to clean off the remaining rock and to help stabilize the bone.
The jackets, I'm sorry, what does that mean?
The plaster jackets, the plaster and burlap jackets. And then we unite all the jackets back in my lab, and it's just unbelievable. I mean, I had a big lab, and like every space is taken up by Dreadnoughtus bones. Every drawer, every shelf, the countertops wrapping around like 30 feet of wall this way and 30 feet of wall that way. You might be able to find that if you Googled Dreadnoughtus and Drexel, which is where I was.
Like D-R-E-A-D?
Yeah, the name means fears nothing, Dreadnought.
Yeah, why did you name it that?
Well, so Dreadnoughtus in life, all fleshed out, would have weighed 65 tons. Yeah, look at that picture there. There we go. So that was in my lab back in the day. Look at all the bones that are in there.
Whoa.
Yeah.
So you got the spine back there, it looks like,
that's the
behind
tail
you?
in the far back.
That was close.
To my right on the table are its dorsal vertebrae, so the mid-back portion. It's huge, huge animal. So in life, this thing is 65 tons. 65 tons is the mass of 13 bull African elephants. It's the mass of 9 T-Rex. It's 10 tons heavier than a Boeing 737.
But this was an herbivore, not a...
You can only get that big if you eat plants.
Right.
Wait,
you can only get that big if you eat plants?
Sure. Well, look at the big animals today. Look at elephants and hippos and, whales eat plankton. They eat low on the food chain because that's where the energy is. Each level of the food chain is called a trophic level. And when you go from one level to the next, you leave about 90% of the energy behind. So if you want to be either really big or really numerous, you have to eat plants because that's where all the energy is.
I never thought of it that way.
Yeah.
There's a lot of vegans out there right now going, we're on to something.
There we go. Yeah.
That's funny.
So these giant sauropod dinosaurs, well, first of all, with the mass. So, if you're 9 times the mass of a T-Rex, what have you to fear except maybe gravity, right? So the name Dreadnought fears nothing.
When did you come up with the name? Like during this process, or did you?
During this process, we were working on the data that would become the paper, and we had a terrible snowstorm one day, and I couldn't go to work, so I sat on the couch that day and I wrote out about 30 possible dinosaur names, Latinized them, hung it on the refrigerator for 2 years, and every time we'd have guests over the house, I'd give them the paper and I'd say, just check the ones that you like.
Oh, that's cool.
And Dreadnoughtus was the runaway winner.
It's such a hard name. It sounds like an album cover.
Yeah.
Dreadnoughtus.
It's kind of badass, isn't it?
Yeah. I feel like, I feel like that could definitely pass for a few guys, right? Mm-hmm. Lil Wayne's got a new name for the next one. So how many years was that process where you sent it out to 3 different places and then brought it all back for one?
It was 5 years.
5 years.
Yeah, 5 years in the field, 5 years in the lab. Yeah, and then we published it on September 4th. 2014.
Now, how does that... So you name it because you discovered. It's never been discovered before. You're checking all the sources. There's never been anything like this. So you publish a paper and you're just allowed to name it. And now that's what it's named. That's literally how it works?
Yep, that's how it works.
So cool.
Yeah. That's how it works for fossil species. For living species, there's a commission on zoological nomenclature, and they have to approve the name. We don't have that in paleontology, and I actually wish we did because there are some crappy dinosaur names out there.
What's the crappiest?
I hate to say because I know all these people, but there's one that really bothers me. There was a beautiful spinosaurid dinosaur found in Brazil, and it was found in a very hard ironstone, so it was very difficult to work with in the lab, and they named it Irritator.
Irritator?
Like making it all about them. Yeah.
We could, I mean, a rebrand might be in order.
Yeah, and I mean, you know, the thing that gets me about
They
this.
named that Irritator?
Yeah.
God, it's so, like, menacing.
So, you know, here's this dinosaur species that evolved and lived under its own auspices and did amazing things while our ancestors are these little shrew-like mammals trying to stay
Right.
away from them. And now we evolve into what we are, they're extinct, and now, you know, this evolved little shrew is now in charge of their legacy.
Yeah.
You know, and I feel like that is, no pun intended, a grave responsibility, you know?
I agree with you.
And so for the dinosaurs that I've named, I wanted to come up with names that, like, is meaningful to that animal, that tells you a little something about them, that honors their legacy, which is why I think we need a naming body for paleontology, so we get names that honor the creatures.
I nominate you for president of this. I think you'd be really good. They could put it can be housed at the new museum. Sounds like you put an office wing there, right?
We could do that.
That's not a no. He's thinking about it. He's like, he's going to go back to Ben Lamb going, how much we need for this? Ben, pay up. Let's go. So you discovered this one. You've discovered other ones that you've named as well. What's your favorite one besides Dreadnoughtus that you found?
Besides Dreadnoughtus, well, you know, probably my first love, Paralotitan from Egypt. That was really special. I was part of a team that discovered that, and that was super exciting for me. That was my first big expedition. I was a first-year professor. You know, I got my first publication was in the journal Science. That's a home run for a scientist. Yeah. And we had that documentary narrated by Matthew McConaughey.
Matthew McConaughey narrated it?
Yeah.
Oh, that's hard.
Yeah. So that was a
you see
really,
a dinosaur
really good.
out here.
Yeah.
And it was living while you were dying.
Apparently, it took like 3 times as long as they expected to do the voiceover because
he's a perfectionist.
Well, yeah, and maybe, you know.
And you know what?
He might have been, you know.
Oh, right. Yeah. Listen, that's exactly what I want Matthew McConaughey doing. If he's doing a dinosaur voiceover, I need him high as a kite and having a good time and making sure he's getting the vibes.
So he said my name probably 100 times, but I'm guessing he doesn't remember my name.
I need that podcast. Dr. Ken Lacovara with Matthew McConaughey, Dinosaurs. I'll bring the bong. We'll make sure he hits that.
I have no idea what you're talking about.
We'll have a good time. Don't worry about it. Wow, that's cool. Yeah, you've been around doing this for so long, but like I'd asked you about it earlier. It said we were going to come back to it. I should say, you know, were dinosaurs something you were just really fascinated with as a kid? Did it go back that far?
They were, yeah. You know, I grew up, you know where it is, and so I grew up in Linwood, which is on the coast, you know, near Atlantic City, near Ocean City, where there's sand and mud.
Yeah.
Right. There's no fossils there. There's not even proper rocks. Right. So I don't know these things are in the world. And I grew up in a very blue-collar family. My father was a carpenter. My parents were older when they had me, so they're actually like World War II generation. So neither of them finished high school because of World War II. I'm first-generation high school.
Wow.
We didn't have books around the house. I certainly didn't know a scientist. The only people I knew that went to college were my school teachers. So a woman brings in a box of rocks and minerals and fossils in my Cub Scout meeting. And this just excites me terribly, right? I didn't know about these things before. And I think I got a hold of the little golden guide to geology because I wrote an essay in 2nd grade about igneous, metamorphic, and sedimentary rocks. And I wrote that sedimentary rocks are the best kind of rocks because you can find fossils in them. And now that I have a PhD in geology, I can confirm that they are the best kind of rocks. So I determined to be a paleontologist and a geologist at that age, but I have no idea how to get from A to B. And then, you know, that dream kind of starts to fade, and I kind of start to think, well, that's probably not for people like us. And it turns out I was pretty good at playing the drums. And I threw myself in the drumming, and threw my wife says my motto is, why do it when you can overdo it? Right? So like all I do now is play the drums. And in high school, I do this to the exclusion of everything else. My high school guidance counselor, when I went into him to talk about choosing a college, he's looking at my stuff and he's shaking his head, puts down my folder and says, Ken, I really don't think you're college material. You should probably consider a trade, right? Because all I do is play the drums.
Right.
And I had a really good memory, so I could get by. Like, I don't think I ever brought a book home because I just played the drums. So then I overdid it. And I don't know if you've ever heard of competitive drum corps, but it's like the World Series of, think like the World Series of marching band, but like super hard, super, amount of dedication required.
Like the movie Drumline kind of
deal? But harder, more technical.
Okay.
Not as flashy.
There's Nick Cannon.
So I kind of flip out and like, this is what I'm doing. I move out to California to be in the world's best drum corps called the Blue Devils. I play with them. We tour the country. We go to the international. In the Blue Devils, I was 20.
Okay.
Right. I started touring the country with drum corps when I was 17. So like, I'm just drumming. I come back and I'm gigging around, Atlantic City, Summers Point, places like that. I end up as the house drummer at the Golden Nugget Casino in Atlantic City.
Oh, yeah.
And I play hundreds of shows in the Opera House there. I'm up on stage with the singers and the dancers. It's a 1,000-seat theater. We do 8 shows a week. I'm wearing a tuxedo every night, and things are going great. And then something happens. Carl Sagan's book, Cosmos, comes out. And I read it, and I feel like he has written it just for me. And he's answering all the questions that I had about how the universe worked. And I thought, I got to find a way to become a scientist. I got to find a way to get back to my childhood passion. So I decide on this secret plan, right? Because it's too audacious. It's too ridiculous at this point in my life to tell people that this is my plan. Right. And so I get myself back in school. I was taking what they call a gap year now. Back then it was just called dropping out. So I get myself back in school. I like the old term. Which is Glassboro State College.
Rowan.
Right, which is Rowan now, where I work. Now I'm super serious. I get straight A's. It gets me into a good grad program at the University of Maryland. I get my master's there. That gets me into a really good PhD program in geology at the University of Delaware, and I get my PhD there. And then I get unbelievably lucky and land a job at Drexel University right out of the gate.
How many years did that take, doing college, master's, and PhD?
It was about 10. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. And then so I'm ready to start this class that I'm teaching. It's a night class. I show up. This is 1999. This is before I became full-time faculty, but I'm teaching as an adjunct there. So I show up for my first class. I'm in my little professor suit. And I got my little professor case, and there's a sign on the door that the class is canceled because of enrollment. So now I'm like, oh, shit, I'm in Philadelphia. I'm all dressed up. I got nothing to do. I see a sign on a kiosk that there's a lecture at the Academy of Natural Sciences that night from the eminent paleontologist Peter Dotson. And he's going to talk about the possibility of dinosaurs in Egypt. So I figure, okay, I'll go to that. So I go there, I listen to his talk, and then I go up to him afterwards and I say, Dr. Dodson, it's really nice to meet you, but I got to tell you something. Your geology is all wrong. And he's like, what are you talking about?
You told him he was wrong.
I did. I said, like, I can see from your slides, those images of the rocks that you're calling river deposits are not river deposits. Those are coastal deposits. I'm sure of it. And he said something to the effect of, well, if you think you could do a better job, kid, why don't you come to Egypt with us? And so I met with his crew the next day, and by the end of lunch, I was going to Egypt to look for dinosaurs.
And this is where we get into this sitting outside the office.
Now, Peter is a great friend of mine. I saw him like 2 weeks ago.
That's cool.
It's a funny story. Now, we've been all over the world together, but that's how it started.
Now, you were saying after 9/11, you couldn't go back over there, obviously, because of all the connections and all that. Yeah. But have you been able to go back there now and do some work?
I could. I haven't been back there since because my research just went, elsewhere.
What is the status of the lost dinosaurs or anything related to them as compared to like 2000 or 2001?
Spinosaurus, the most famous of the lost dinosaurs, has since had new specimens discovered in Morocco. And so there are about 6, I think, fragmentary specimens that have been discovered they've been the subject of great debate. They were reconstructed as a quadrupedal meat-eating dinosaur, and there aren't any other quadrupedal meat-eating dinosaurs, and this has been a huge controversy in paleontology. Part of it is that reconstruction is based on like 6 different individuals, and they have different proportions. So, it's really hard to say.
There weren't other quadrupedal meat-eating dinosaurs?
All the meat eaters are bipedals.
Bipedal.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Because you would think about like, I can only compare it to what we have now, but like lions and stuff like that, obviously
wolves,
quadrupedal.
Yeah.
Interesting. So
Yeah.
here it is, 168 million year old plant-eating dinosaur fossil found
Yeah,
in
that wouldn't be
Morocco.
it. But if you look up Spinosaurus in Morocco, you'll see it.
Spinosaurus in Morocco. Let's pull that up, see what we get.
And so there are new reconstructions of it now. Some of them show it bipedal, some of them show them quadrupedal. Many of them show it to be adapted for like coastal life, maybe a swimming kind of dinosaur. I do think that's true.
A swimming dinosaur, meaning it's similar to a hippo in that way. It goes and swims. It doesn't live under there.
That's right. Yeah. And so, probably a very strong tail. It has a very weird, long, thin, like crocodile type skull. It looks more like a crocodile than a dinosaur.
Do we have an estimate? I keep thinking of this today. Do we have an estimate on, I don't even care which period, whether it's Jurassic or Cretaceous or whatever, but do we have an estimate on what the maximum population of dinosaurs was on the Earth at a given time?
You mean number of species or numbers of individuals?
Numbers of individuals.
Oh, it would have been, imagine, before people fanned out across the world, like the abundance of mammals on the land, the herds of 1 million bison and passenger pigeons that would block out the sun for a day, and it would have been like that, right? Probably even more. So there would have been just millions and millions, maybe billions of dinosaurs on the land at one time. Yeah.
All right, Joe just got the sub. Should we scroll to the top, Joe, on this article? All right.
So that second picture,
fossils confirm enormous river monster, Rome, Morocco. That looks like a dinosaur crocodile right there.
Well, it has a very crocodile. It's called convergent evolution. So when 2 different species are adapting to similar situations, oftentimes they begin to look like each other, right? They begin to have morphological similarities.
Again, over hundreds of millions of years, though.
Well, millions of years.
I'm sorry, millions of years, right?
Yeah. I mean, just think of the dorsal fin of a whale. That's the back fin of a whale, and the dorsal fin of a fish. They don't get them from a common ancestor. They evolve them because they're solving similar problems in their environment, right?
What do we know, like whales today that exist? They're such amazing creatures. What do we chart them back to? Obviously, they're not dinosaurs, but
whales are super cool. So whales are artiodactyls. They're in the same group with all the hooved animals, like deer.
Interesting.
Yeah. So they first evolved. If you look at, if you can look up Pakicetus, like Pakistan, or Ambulocetus, try Pakicetus first. So there's a group of hooved animals that are carnivores. They're living on the south shore of Asia, roughly 35 million years ago. And they're becoming more and more aquatic in the way that maybe a sea otter is becoming more and more aquatic. And you can imagine in 1 million years, maybe a sea otter is a fully aquatic animal, right? And we have this beautiful transitional record of whales now becoming more aquatic. And then we start to see something like Basilocetus, which looks like a whale, but it still has some legs, and then we eventually see those get smaller and go away. And then whales. And so the first whales are the toothed whales, and we have toothed whales today in the group called Odontocetes, like the killer whale and the sperm whale. And then later the baleen whales evolved, the big ones like the humpback whales and the blue whales that have the baleen for filtering out plankton. But if you look there, see that third picture, I think that's probably Pakicetus there.
A whale is related to that.
That is a whale. Yeah, and so that's how they start.
How big is that, the Pachyceta?
That's like wolf size.
And it gets to a whale.
Yeah.
That's like...
Now, here's the thing. that I love about geology and deep time is that it's all so contingent. So you kill off that thing on the southern shores of Pakistan 38 million years ago, and today there are no whales.
And the planet looks entirely different as a result. It affects the whole food chain.
It would, yeah. That asteroid that wiped out the dinosaurs, like all asteroids, like all the planets, it formed when the solar system formed 4.5 billion years ago. Go out to the asteroid belt 4.5 billion years ago and hit that asteroid with a piece of popcorn, and then 66 million years ago, it doesn't hit the Earth, and the dinosaurs don't go extinct, and they lasted for 165 million years, and why not another 66 million years more?
And we're not here. We never happened.
And we're not here. If you can Google something called Pikaia, so Pikaia, I think.
Got it.
I'm really testing your skills here, Joe, aren't I?
Joe
Yeah, there we go.
Joe is
Check
on
out that
it,
first
man.
picture.
The first one right there?
Yeah. So Pikaia is from the Cambrian period. So it's about 500 million years ago.
Okay.
Really old.
So pre-dinosaurs.
Way pre-dinosaurs, right? And so this is a time when we get, it's called the Cambrian explosion. We get like the phyla that we have today, like we're in the phylum Chordata, right? And so the phyla that we have today, they all appear in the Cambrian. And we get, life is mostly small and kind of slimy then, but we get the first macro predator. It's this meter-long thing called a Anomalocaris, and it's got a hard body, and it's free swimming, and these big pincers, and this terrible mouth. So if you went back to the Cambrian and looked around, you'd see something like a Anomalocaris, and you'd say, bingo, that's going to be the winner. That's going to be the thing that, shapes the future of the Earth. But there's little Pikaia that exists at the same time. Pikaia is about 1.5 centimeters. It's tiny, it's soft, it doesn't look tough. You would never, ever put your money on Pikaia. But it has some interesting features. It has bilateral symmetry.
Bilateral symmetry.
This side looks like this side.
Okay.
It has its sensory organs concentrated anteriorly, right, at one end. It has a one-way digestive system, which I happen to think is the best kind of digestive system.
Agreed.
Right? Does that sound like anybody you know?
Humans.
Yep. It sounds like everything that has bones.
Yeah.
Sounds like vertebrate animals. And so if little Pikaia doesn't make it out of the Cambrian period, there will never be fish, there will never be whales, there will never be dinosaurs or chickens or wombats or hoary bats or you or me if that thing fails in the Cambrian period. That's how contingent it all is.
It's the butterfly effect of life.
It is. At any one moment in time, there are an infinite number of futures.
Yes.
But we only get one.
Do you ever get stressed out thinking about where it all comes from?
Not where it all comes from. Where it's going is what stresses me out. Because, the chance of us is almost zero, but it wasn't zero. And we got that one path that led to us. And, because of many, many accidents. And what are we doing with our great good fortune now? We're using the atmosphere as a garbage can. Yeah. And we're killing off life on Earth. And we need these things to persist into the future. And I feel so terrible that the planet that we're leaving for our posterity, for our children and our grandchildren, is not the one that we've been so privileged to enjoy. Yeah. It's a depauperate, degraded planet that we're passing off to them, and we're passing off these problems to them. And
it's the species thing, too. I mean, what was that number you gave me earlier? 72% since 1970?
Well, that's individuals. But if you look at the extinction of species, the most optimistic estimate that I can calculate is that we're losing a species on planet Earth roughly every other day. That's the best case. Worst case is about 1 every 13 minutes. So the truth is probably somewhere in between there. Take if you look up the fringe-limb tree frog.
Fringe-limb tree frog.
Fringe-limb tree frog from the cloud forest of Panama, a remarkable little creature with parasols on its limbs so it could glide from tree to tree across the misty forest canopy. Yeah, look at that very first picture.
Okay.
Now, that particular individual that's in that picture, I happen to know. Its name is Tuffy. And Tuffy lived in the Atlanta Botanical Garden until the ripe old frog age of 12, when he died. When Tuffy died, He was the last of his species.
Oh,
That's a species that has had an unbroken chain of ancestry stretching back 3.8 billion years to our microbial forebears. It's a lineage that survived all 5 mass extinctions, including the one that took out the dinosaurs, but it couldn't survive us.
how do we go 3.8 billion years back? Like, can you just walk me as a layman through the science of that got us to determine that? That's unbelievable.
Yeah. So so the early Earth forms from a giant solar nebula, right? It's a cloud of dust and gas in space. Almost all of that material goes into the sun, which causes the sun to ignite, right? What's left, like the 1% that's left, are the planets. Almost all of that goes into Jupiter, and then there's a little bit left that forms the rest of the planets in the asteroid belt, which is probably a failed planet. It's a very turbulent time in the solar system, and in early Earth, it's called the age of bombardment. And so there's all this leftover debris in the solar system, often crashing into the Earth, causing sterilizing level impacts, right? So we can't really have life on Earth from 4.5 billion years ago until 3.8 billion years ago. That's when the age of bombardment ends. That's when it's possible to have persistent life on Earth. When do we see persistent life on Earth? 3.8 billion years. As soon as it becomes possible for life, we get life.
And we can trace this scientifically back to that first cell, you're saying?
We can trace all life back to the first bacteria, something that we call the last universal common ancestor, or LUCA, right? And so we can see in our DNA that we're all related, right? Okay. You and I share, I don't know if this is exactly the number, but roughly like 40% of our DNA with a carrot, right? And so all life on Earth goes back to that, a common universal ancestor, which was a bacterium, right? And so that's 3.8 billion years ago. So Tuffy there, a fringe-limbed tree frog, is part of a lineage, not a single species, but in part of a lineage that stretches back 3.8 billion years. And its portion of that lineage survived all that time, all 5 mass extinctions, but couldn't survive us.
And what specifically led to its extinction in this era, do you think?
In this case, it was a terrible fungus called the chytrid fungus, which is very rough on amphibians. And the chytrid fungus is getting into places where it never could before, mostly because of logging and roads that now cut through the rainforest, and now it's able to get into these places. And it's actually one of the things that Colossal Bioscience is working on, is to create genetically resistant amphibians, because we're losing amphibians at just a heartbreaking rate.
Yeah, and that was actually something really that gave me a lot of hope from a conversation with Ben and Matt, because on the surface, you see how Colossal is marketing, oh, we're going to bring the woolly mammoth back. Oh, we just brought back dire wolves. But if what they're saying is true and they can develop genetic, I'm just going to make it simple for everyone out there, genetic material that can be relatable to species that exist today to help them. The one example they painted that was really incredible was the elephant, in how they may be trying to design DNA for a woolly mammoth. In doing so, they can relate that to the family tree of elephant and be able to stop, I forget what the official term is.
There's a terrible virus that is
it's like herpes for elephants or something, right? It kills 20% of elephants or something like that. If they can use that data to then stop something like that, boom, you have real conservation, which is very cool.
Yeah, the thing is that, we're out of time. So these aren't either or questions, it's a yes and, right? And so we have to do everything we can all at once because we're out of time.
What got you involved with Colossal? When did you first hear about it, and what drew you to it?
I had read about the work for quite some time. I actually was introduced to Ben at an Explorers Club event in the Azores.
Right, yeah.
And so we hit it off right away. I wanted to be part of it. He invited me in, and so I'm on the scientific advisory board, and it's just fascinating. But beyond that, I think it has I think it has the chance to do like immense good in the world, and that's why I'm part of it.
Yeah, I think you know, people, including me, are always going to get nervous when you do things that obviously haven't been done before, but you're also, you know, you're making DNA sequences. It's like, are you playing God or doing things like that? But again, if it's scientifically relatable to things that can be currently adapted to our environment and help what, you know, you say we're out of time with right now, then I think you have to look at it. I think that, you know, innovation, if you can use business and innovation to do that, do it. Because, you know, we have so many people around the world who have worked in conservation all their lives who have been screaming out for help. And a lot of people don't listen because it's not in their backyard. You know, my buddy Paul Rosalie comes to mind. I've talked about him a bunch before. He's lived down in the Amazon for 19 years. And, you know, he has attention now in the last couple years, you know, got to do a bunch of podcasts and things like that. But for years, he's like, guys, they're burning this place down. Some of the species you were just talking about, he's watching this die all the time. And when I went down there to visit him and see this up close, it's like, you get it, right? But most people aren't going to get down there to visit it. So they hear about it and they go, oh, that sounds terrible. And they go about their day, you know? And yet you're talking about something in that case, forget even just the individual species. The Amazon rainforest provides 20% approximately of the world's oxygen. So if that place, you know, got to a point of no return exponentially to where you can't save it, you can't just replant trees and stuff like that, you're potentially affecting the biosphere. Maybe, I don't want to be like over dramatic, but potentially irreversibly.
Well, the thing about the Amazon, and it's true, it would be irreversible. The Amazon makes its own weather. It's so enormous that it actually creates the climatic conditions that make it a rainforest. And at some point, a smaller Amazon rainforest can't make the weather anymore. And we don't know what that point is. So it's not linear. It's not like we can take a chip away here and a chip away there and we're still good. At some point, the system switches states and then we lose it all.
Yeah.
And that's a scary, scary thought. And, you know, you mentioned like some people will say like, well, you're playing God. Well, did they ever say that when we're using our technology to do harm? You know, when the Australian government issued a bounty on the Tasmanian tiger and people went out and shot every single one, were they playing God then? Were they accused of that? When we chop down the Amazon rainforest, is that playing God? When we use the atmosphere as a trash can, is that playing God? Right?
It's a
Why
fair
can't we use our technology for good? You know?
Yeah, I think the question becomes, again, maybe we've all seen too many movies, but it's like the first person's like, I got it. You know, and then suddenly it morphs into, sorry, it's zombies, you know, so I, like, naturally my head goes there on some of that stuff.
People liken what Colossal is doing to Jurassic Park, right?
Yes.
But I think what is underappreciated, and, you know, people will conflate, like, woolly mammoths and dinosaurs, it's all old. Woolly mammoths aren't old.
Yeah, compared to dinosaurs, they're an infant, less than that.
The last population of mammoths went extinct on Wrangel Island off Siberia, 3,300 years ago.
Yeah.
3,300 years ago is a world that has pyramids. It's a world that has written stories. It's a world that has beer.
Right.
If you live in a world that has beer, you're living in this world.
Yes.
Right? So they have a place in this world. It's still their world. The dodo, their world still exists. The Tasmanian tiger, we have movies of them.
Yes.
Right? That's this world. So, you know, I kind of take the Pottery Barn philosophy on this. Like, you broke it, you bought it, you know? So, like, why shouldn't we fix these problems? Because we clearly created them.
Are you, because you are the dinosaur guy, you know, and involved with this, and as you just pointed out, what they've been talking about at Colossal are all stuff that are of this world. Have you had conversations with Ben about, you know, not tomorrow or something, but about the idea of potentially producing a dinosaur?
Well, I don't think it's possible. So
you don't think it's possible?
DNA is a water-soluble molecule.
Okay.
And the oldest DNA recovered so far from an individual is about 800,000 years. And the oldest environmental DNA, meaning you get the sediment and you just analyze whatever's in that, is about 1.5 million. 1.5 million years is a long way from Dinosaurville, right?
Right.
So I don't know that we'll ever recover sequenceable dinosaur DNA. I mean, I would never say never, but it doesn't look good, right?
So what draws you to Colossal if it's not? I mean, that may be way oversimplifying you as a scientist, so I apologize if I am. But what draws you to that if it's not directly related to dinosaurs? Is it just the idea of like, hey, there's some really cool technology that can help with conservation, which is something that you look at and are involved with?
Yeah, it's ecosystem restoration,
Got it.
it's environmental justice, it's conservation. You know, these techniques that are being developed to maybe bring back the mammoth are the same ones that we need to help species that are on the brink today.
Yeah. Now, evolutionarily, we had some conversations about this when Ben and Matt were in here, but I need to have more too because it's really complex, and you're a scientist, so you could definitely help with this. But evolutionarily, if I am able to figure out the DNA sequencing of a woolly mammoth, right, and I'm able to then create it, I can't. Let me give this example. Actually, this is a little better. So if you're like a large elk, and you over millions of years adapted so that you could jump 30 feet or whatever it might be to run away from whatever predator's coming after you. That's an evolutionary thing that did affect you physically, obviously, to be able to do that. But you have something wired in you to run from this thing and to make this action, jump 30 feet laterally to get away from it. If I build a woolly mammoth, and let's pretend for a second it's an elk. It's not, but just bear with me on this. I can build it to have the DNA to look like it's supposed to look, but is there really a way that I can build in the evolution of knowing I got to jump 30 feet to run from this predator?
It depends. I mean, some behaviors are hardwired. Like songbirds are born with like a base song. You could raise them in isolation in a laboratory where they never ever see another bird of their kind, and they will still have a rudimentary song of their species. And then there's culture, right? And birds will teach each other variants of that song.
Yes.
And a songbird in New Jersey might sing that song differently than the same species of bird in North Carolina.
Right.
Right. And so there's learned behaviors and there's genetically hardwired behaviors. So it just depends on where that behavior resides and the portion of it that is genetic and the portion of it that is acquired.
Got it.
Right.
Okay. So the dire wolves that they just made, that's like the first kind of main iteration of this where they're able to take existing gray wolf DNA and morph that enough to get something that may have existed, whatever it was, 10,000 years ago.
Yeah, I mean the first iteration was really the woolly mice that they made, where they took mammoth genomes. I think they made 8 substitutions to get some of the phenotypical traits, meaning like the morphological traits, into those mice. But it's a similar process with the gray wolf to the dire wolf. Yeah. And I don't know if people really appreciate like what a technological breakthrough this is, what they're doing. And again, it's the same technology that they're developing that we need for conservation today. And it's not, it's not an either or. And it's not like, I know from philanthropy and my business, you have to raise a lot of money. It's not like you get to decide what happens with the donor's money, right? Like they get excited about a thing, and it's not like, well, I'm going to use it for this thing instead. No, you use it for the thing that they donated for, right? And it's the same with investors. Like it's not like they could have. It's not like Ben would get an investor to invest in this, and this. It's like they got excited about this thing. So it's kind of a specious argument to say, well, why don't you use that money for this, or why don't you use that money for that? That money is not available for those things, right? Not that those things aren't worthy, but let's go raise money for those things too.
Yes.
And then let's use this technology to help solve all these other issues because it's very powerful technology.
Absolutely. Now, what are some of the latest, I guess, news and tidbits or discoveries, I should say, that have been made in your field within dinosaurs? Like have there been any other new teams that have been finding new dinosaurs in the past few years, and what have they found? Always.
So if you go back 100 years ago, there was a new dinosaur species published about once a year. Go to the 1970s, it's about a half a dozen a year. Now there's a new dinosaur species published about once a week.
Whoa.
Yeah. So it's hard to keep up, really, because the world is freer, people are more mobile, there's more people, right? There's 8 billion people on the planet, and there's always going to be like some tiny, tiny fraction of people that are paleontologists.
Yeah.
But now that fraction's just, from a much bigger number.
Sure.
So there's more paleontologists than have ever been. It's easier to get around the world. There's more places we can get to, so there's more eyes on the ground. And we just find a hell of a lot of dinosaur bones now. And if you look at the rate of discovery, we're still in the steep part of the curve. Like there's no indication that like we're getting near peak dinosaur. We're not.
So it's still largely untapped.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, this could probably go on for pretty much as long as humanity persists.
Are there any places right now that you're itching to go to?
Sure. Yeah. Love to get back to Patagonia.
Mm-hmm.
I know there's more bones in the ground there. China has been amazing since it really opened up to paleontology in the 90s. The stuff that comes out of China is just absolutely mind-blowing.
Wow. So they opened it up to you guys.
Yeah, I've done some work in China, and it's incredible there.
Where in China?
I was in the Gobi Desert, within sight of Mongolia, and then I was in a tiny, tiny little village called Chiangma, which is in the foothills of the Himalayas between the Gobi Desert and the Taklamakan Desert. It's as far from an ocean as you can get in the world. And we found some incredible 95 million-year-old bird fossils there.
What kind of birds?
It's a bird called Gansus. If you saw a Gansus today, in a little pond off the Garden State Parkway, you wouldn't think anything of it. It was so modern. Birds got super modern a really, really long time ago.
Why is that?
I don't know, but it's, there's no real why in evolution. Evolution happens because it does.
So they just have, meaning, to go back to the core of this, they haven't changed a fuck ton since that period, whereas a lot of other things have gone through massive changes or new things have formed. Yeah, it looks like a duck.
Yeah, right. Yeah,
Wow.
So, that doesn't look like, super primitive or super ancient, right? Like,
Yeah, I think we got a couple of those out here in Hoboken.
Yeah, exactly. You could imagine that here in this world, except if you look very closely, those birds have teeth, which is a little different, right? Yeah, and there are some other, there are many other differences really with today's birds. But, as I said, the Cretaceous period, the end of the time of dinosaurs, it's getting pretty modern. The continents are recognizable. There's ducks at the end of the Cretaceous. There's probably parrots at the end of the Cretaceous. We're the mammals are what's a lot different because they're little shrew-like creatures.
Yeah.
But things are starting to get modern. There's flowering plants in the Cretaceous period.
Now, it over hundreds of millions of years moved from like Pangea, where everything's together, to now we're towards the end of the Cretaceous period, and it looks at least similar to what we have now. But that means that, as you said earlier, looking from Hoboken and a mile away is Africa, and now it's thousands of miles and everything. So how does that affect? Are there dinosaurs that in that movement suddenly became sea creatures, or
no, not
the
sea
other way
creatures,
around?
because they stay on the land. The land is like
They
rafts,
just follow
right?
the land.
But if you look at the breakup of the continents, and if you look at the family tree of any group, really, it's the same, right? Because it's separation that causes speciation.
Yes.
So as the continents separate, those species go in their own directions. And as those bits begin to fragment, you see that reflected in the phylogenetic trees as a result.
So we know that something like a T-Rex could have only existed in these places versus in those places. Okay.
Right. Yeah, you're not going to find a T-Rex in Africa. They had no way to get there at that point.
And you said the climate, I'd asked this earlier, but the climate is roughly during these periods very warm everywhere. So Mantua's not getting snow.
No, although the Appalachians at the time weren't these like little embarrassing nubs of mountains like we have today.
You call them embarrassing.
The Appalachians?
That's a shot at the Appalachians.
I'm sorry, but for mountains, all right.
They're just catching some strays right now. Come on.
Let me call them charming.
Okay.
How about that?
That's nice.
Yeah.
I hear the government has doomsday bunkers there, so,
But, as far as mountain ranges go,
it's not the Rockies.
Bless their hearts, right?
I got you. So they were there, and then
But in the Cretaceous period, the Appalachians were like the Himalayas.
they were way higher.
They were like 25, 30,000 feet high.
How'd they shrink down?
Well, you know why I know that is if you take all of the sediment that makes up the continental shelf and all of the sediment that makes up the coastal plain, like New Jersey and North Carolina, take all that sediment, pile it back on top of the Appalachians, you've got something that looks like the Himalayas.
So it basically, and I'm fast forwarding the environment here, but it's like it just washed away.
Yeah,
and
the,
spread out
the Earth's
like sand.
geological processes always try to make high things low and low things high, right? So they erode away mountains and they fill in low spots, right? So that's always what's happening. And so the Appalachians get lower and all that stuff goes out in the ocean and fills up that hole.
No, I've been thinking this question all day, but I'd love to just get some definition here because you're a paleontologist, meaning you study fossils to try to discover dinosaurs and old species. But like you've also mentioned, and to do what you do, you have to have an expertise in geology too. So you're a geologist.
My PhD is in geology.
Okay, so that's wow. So you have to be multiple things really to do what you do.
Paleontology is the intersection of geology and biology.
Okay.
So paleontologists, there are no PhDs in paleontology. Paleontologists usually get a PhD in biology or geology.
Got it. And then they morph them.
Now, I got a PhD in geology, but when I was a professor for 18 years, I was a professor of biology. So it's in between there.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, another thing is, like you talked about down in Patagonia when you were discovering Dreadnoughtus. I got the name right? That's it. So you said you noticed like a fibula or tibia or something.
The first thing was a femur. Yeah.
A femur. That's right. Sticking up from the ground. The first thought that comes to mind is like how do you have something that's 200 million years old, whatever it is, and yet a remain of it somehow is still above the ground? Like you would think that just the movement, forget whether it goes low or high with wherever the land is, you would think just the movement of sediment would make that thing sink, I don't know, gravity over time and be way deeper. How does it stay so high up?
Well, it wasn't. So erosion is the paleontologist's best friend. That's why we want to work in places like Badlands. So a Badlands is a place that gets it's the sweet spot as far as rain. If you get too little rain, like if you're in a true desert, that's generally under 9 inches per year, there's just not enough water to do any work, and there's not a lot of erosion. If you get too much rain, then you get too many plants, and you can't see the rocks. So if you get, something like maybe 15 inches or 20 inches of rain a year, you don't get very many plants, but you get enough water working to erode the hillsides. So the bones are under, they might be under hundreds of feet of rock, but then those hillsides start to erode, and every year they touch new bones, every year they expose new bones. And when the bone is exposed at the surface, it quickly becomes destroyed. It starts to weather.
Yes.
And so the paleontologist, after, in the case of Dreadnoughtus, it's about 77 million years old. So Dreadnoughtus and me had to get to the same spot on Earth within maybe a 10-year window, or we would never get to see each other.
Wow.
Yeah.
That feels like divine, right?
Well, the thing is that we get to do this experiment so many times because the Earth is very, very old and life has been multitudinous. So the improbable becomes the probable over geological time. Another way of saying that is unlikely things are likely to happen when happening happens a lot.
Unlikely things are likely to happen when happening happens a lot.
Yeah.
I see what you're saying. I understand that. So meaning there's a lot that we'll never know about that just got lost because you didn't find it in that 10-year period.
That's right.
Effectively.
And I have seen, what we call ghost fossils, which means I got there a little too late. I can see the crumbled, weathered rind of where there used to be bones maybe 10 years before, and I just got there too late, and now it's just like this stain in the rock where they used to be.
That's got to be frustrating.
Yeah, it is. Or I've had some bones that I just knew I would never be able to collect, and I just kind of see ya, yeah.
Now, how were you able to date the Dreadnoughtus to 77 million years exactly?
So you don't date the fossils themselves. That's for archaeology, right? And so most people have heard of carbon dating, right? We don't use that. Carbon dating doesn't go back far enough.
Okay.
Right? The half-life of carbon-14 is 5,730 years, I think. Somebody will check me on that.
Yeah, I'm going to take your word for it.
But after 5,730 years, half of the C14 is left, and then after another of those time periods, half is left. And so that's so rapid that you can only use it back to about 50,000 years or 60,000 maybe tops. And
Not good enough for you.
And that doesn't do anything for paleontology. Yeah. So that's great if you're studying, Roman remains or something. What we do is mostly what we call biostratigraphy, which is we look at the other fossils that are in the sediment. Remember I said it's really important to look at the sediment, the study of the sediment. So the sediment will have microfossils in them, and the microfossils are what we use to tell time, because you'll have these species of things called maybe foraminifera or diatoms, these little microscopic single-cell organisms. And elsewhere in the world, those species maybe have been sandwiched between two volcanic layers. And it's the volcanic layers that we're able to date because they have the right kinds of rocks. We do what's called potassium argon dating with volcanic layers. And so we'll know from like this place in the world that this species of microbe lived at this time, and from this place in the world another species lived at this time, and another place they lived at this time. Put all those together, and then these two or these three can only live together in this thin slice of time, right? And we have this mapped out all over the world. So then you find these microfossils in a site, and you see, well, I found this, and this, and it might be 12 species that could only be this thin slice of time. And that's mostly how we date the fossils themselves. It's not direct dating, but it's biostratigraphy based on work elsewhere in the world.
It's like deductive reasoning, basically. Understood. That makes sense. Now, we got off it earlier. You've talked about it a little bit, but when the actual extinction event happens with this asteroid that hits approximately 66 million years ago, you said it hit in Mexico, and what was it, 11 miles wide or something? Okay.
Yep.
So the force of that, I think you also said what that was. It was so strong that it shook the Earth effectively to its core. Am I saying that scientifically correctly?
In New Jersey, we would have felt a magnitude 10.3 earthquake.
Oh.
The Earth can't make a magnitude 10.3 earthquake. Rocks aren't that strong. You can only make an earthquake that big if the Earth is rung from the outside like a bell. Yeah.
So effectively all life dies immediately.
Not all life. I mean, we're here, right?
Let me restate that. Effectively, almost all dinosaurs die immediately, and the rest of them die within approximately how much time after that?
So let me take you through it. So the asteroid hits off the coast of Mexico, blows a 110-mile crater in the Earth's crust by 12 miles deep. Imagine what that weighs. That's roughly Massachusetts times 12 miles deep, right? Pulverize it, but you still have the same mass, even though those particles might be a millimeter across. Take that mass, throw it up through the atmosphere. You've given that mass a tremendous amount of potential gravitational energy. That's got to balance the energy books when it comes back in. It does that mostly from friction. You've seen images of like the Apollo space capsules flaming back into the atmosphere.
Yes.
Well, imagine that day, trillions upon trillions of millimeter-sized space capsules, each one flaming its way back into the atmosphere, and each one heating up a little parcel of air around itself. So the result is that day, global atmospheric temperature in the first hour gets up somewhere between toaster oven and pizza oven. I said that online, and somebody commented, Americans will do anything to avoid the metric system. But it's a good analogy, I think.
I like visuals. That's good. We'll stay with that.
Meanwhile, so if you're a dinosaur living on the coast of New Jersey, you don't know anything's wrong, right? You don't see the asteroid coming in. It's over your horizon. But then I worked with a scientist who works for NASA on these calculations. 8 minutes and 37 seconds later, that magnitude 10.3 earthquake comes through. If you're a big dinosaur, you're knocked off your feet. You probably die that way, because if you're giant like Dreadnoughtus, if you're 65 tons, you don't get to fall down even once. If you fall down, you're dead. Just fall down in general. Yeah. Yeah.
Never
I mean,
thought of
if
it
you're
that way.
65 tons, you're going to break when you fall down, right? You're going to burst,
I mean, you're the scientist.
I think.
Wow.
Their ribs are big, but they're only that thick. They're going to pierce lungs, pierce organs. So earthquake, 8.5 minutes out. 17 minutes out is when the sky falls. That's the most deadly moment. That's when that ejecta comes back in and it gets to like toaster oven to pizza oven. If you can't get underground, you're dead, right? And it's radiative heat, not convective heat. So radiative is like those heaters they have at outdoor restaurants, right? It's line of sight heat. If you go around the corner, you don't feel that heat anymore, right?
Yeah.
So you got to get away from that line of sight. All of the non-avian dinosaur egg nests that we know about. So non-avian means regular dinosaurs, not birds, right? All of those nests that have been found, and paleontologists have found thousands of them, are all a crater that some mama dinosaur scraped in the ground, and she laid her eggs right on the surface. So 100% of the life cycle of non-avian dinosaurs on the surface of the earth, no place to hide. Who gets through? Little mammals, good burrowers. Some birds are burrowers. We have burrowing penguins, burrowing owls, burrowing parrots today, right? Burrowing swallows. So some birds get through. Little lizards, turtles, crocodiles, good burrowers, right? So some of them can get underground. Then there's a hot air blast that comes through in New Jersey. It would be about 2.5 hours afterwards. It's going to knock down 90% of the trees and also scorching hot winds. And then in New Jersey, roughly a 72-meter tsunami washes up onto the shore. It grabs the barbecued dinosaur bodies, the downed trees, the sediment, and it hauls it all out to sea where it starts to sink. Now, if you're in the ocean, you're okay at that moment. In fact, you might even, have a party because all this dinosaur barbecue meat is like washing out to sea.
The ocean's not heating up from this, though? I mean,
it's too fast and it's not persistent enough to do that. But then all that dust and gas shrouds out the sun. And pretty soon the phytoplankton in the ocean can't do its thing. And the food chain is really short in the ocean. It's like 2 to 3 weeks. So pretty soon that ripples up to the apex predators and they've got nothing to eat. So these big gluttonous monsters like mosasaurs, they start to starve. And at the end of it all, the largest animal that lives on land, and remember, like yesterday we had T-Rex and Triceratops, the largest animal that lives on land is about the size of a raccoon. And then the largest animal that's left in the ocean is like the size of like a regular shark would be today. So it's devastating. And then that dust and gas shrouds out the sun for, we don't know how long, probably years. We're in this asteroid winter for years.
When you say years, are we talking like in our terms? Like
years in our terms. Like we don't know how long, maybe 2, 3, 5 years. We're not sure. But what we do see is a huge spike in fungus spores during this time. So the world is dark. There's lots of decaying plants, lots of decaying animals. Fungus seems to be going crazy at this time. And so just imagine this like dark, rotting world, this post-apocalyptic Earth with the dinosaurs gone. But then, the sky's clear. Our little mammalian ancestors come out of their hidey holes under the blue sky, and pretty soon, like, the world is ours, and we start to evolve into whales and elk.
And the temperature's normalized at that point.
And the temperature settles down. It's still warmer than today, but it settles down, and then, we gradually move towards today's world then.
Now, so if something like that occurs over years and it's so hot, there's no glaciers, right? By the end of that, it's just...
Well, the heat only is like that day.
Okay.
Yeah.
But the sun's blocked out, so maybe that would help.
So basically we go from, pizza oven to refrigerator.
Right. Okay.
And it's too much for most.
Down.
Yeah.
Okay. So it evens back out. That's a crazy story.
It's a horrendous scenario, isn't it? It's the worst day in the last 500 million years.
And again, you could have thrown a kernel of popcorn at that asteroid
and it
100
never happens.
million years before, and it never.
That's right. That's how contingent it all is.
Do you think we are developing the science enough that if we were able to determine that an asteroid's going to hit us in like 1 million years, we could already stop it right now?
Yes and no.
Yes and no.
We're getting better at knowing where the big ones are. There's still a lot of little ones that we're not tracking. And if we knew a big asteroid was coming to hit the planet today, we don't have the space program that could go out and meet it and stop it.
I could see that.
We could if we wanted to. I mean, the technology definitely exists right now, but we're just not doing it, which seems like a bad idea.
Yeah, if space feels like, I'm so fascinated by space, and obviously, like, I have scientists in here who have spent their life on it, but it feels like the thing that's now coming back with people. But we got like, we used to be so fascinated with it, and then there was like a lull there. People are like, oh yeah, we did that, been there, done that. And it's like, dude, it's so big.
Planetary protection seems like it should be a pretty high priority.
Yeah. Now, do you think for your field or even planetary protection, stuff like that, but I'm really thinking about this, like when you took me through the example of how you date stuff and how you're able to, even like you said, DNA can't be really saved after a certain number of years. Or
I wouldn't
whatever.
say can't, but we haven't discovered
We haven't done it.
Yeah.
Do you think something like AI might be able, that's a very hypothetical question, but might be able to help fill in some of these gaps in your field?
Probably. Who knows how this is going to play out? It's all very early. I could imagine, I mean, so far, I don't know of anybody who has found a dinosaur in any other way than boots on the ground, eyes on the rocks.
Yeah.
But I could imagine having AI process maybe drone imagery or satellite imagery and training it to see things that maybe we wouldn't recognize.
Sure.
I could definitely see that. My friend Sarah Parquette, who's an archaeologist, is already doing archaeology from space. And
archaeology from space?
Yeah, she crowdsources people to help look at satellite images, and they don't know where they're looking at. She takes away the location information because she doesn't want these places to get looted.
Right.
But she crowdsources them, and people are trained on the signs to look for that show that there might be an archaeological remnant there.
Whoa.
But I could see doing that not with crowdsourcing volunteers, but doing it with AI and teaching it to look at, when I go to a new place, it takes me usually about 3 days to get my eyes on, to get what I would call a search image. And at first you feel kind of blind. And then you get to a new place and you start to recognize the preservation pattern that the geology is imprinting on the fossils. And then once you get that, it's like it just snaps into place. And you have like fossil radar and you start to see the fossils everywhere. If I could be trained to do that, then why not AI, right?
Yeah.
And then obviously at a much bigger scale, because there's one of me and there's, AI is.
Yeah, it gets weird because
scalable.
again, we don't know what it looks like yet, and we don't know what it scales to. It's an untapped technology in that way, but it's like, would it be able to actually factually fill in gaps because of its computing power? Like, would it be able to? This probably makes no sense scientifically, but just bear with me. Would it be able to take elephant DNA and morph that not only into woolly mammoth DNA, which is what Ben's working on and utilizing AI to do that, but then be able to morph that into a T-Rex DNA? That seems very unlikely, and you already even said today, like, that seems unlikely, but like, who the hell knows?
What could happen? And it's so you could produce the same morphology through many different genetic pathways. So I don't think we could say that we could predict a T-Rex genome. What AI could probably do in the future is predict a genome that would make the morphology of a T-Rex, but it might not be the T-Rex genome. Right. It's just a genome that functionally does that.
It's a replica.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A facsimile, I would say.
I got you.
Yeah.
Now, in all the science that you've been involved in for decades now, and looking back, 3.8
makes me feel old.
I mean, but no, seriously, like looking back as many years as you're forced to in your field, it's incredible. But it gets to the roots of the planet we live on. I mean, we're not just talking about human history here. We're talking about well beyond that, to where this little rock in space happened to actually come together. And you've talked about the space forces that did that billions of years ago. But, do you believe in like a creator, or that it came from somewhere? What do you think about the origin of it all?
Well, I think it's pretty evident that in the case of the Earth, I mean, the Earth creates itself, right? We know the processes. Life is of the Earth. You know, the Earth gave birth to life. We know those processes. And I think, I think probably the universe created itself.
From nothing.
Well, it's a very philosophical and physics-based question. I mean, if the universe is in a point of singularity, like what does nothing mean? Like where would nothing be?
Right.
Right.
You can't picture it.
If you think of like where did the universe start? Well, everywhere, because everywhere was in that point of singularity, right? I mean, the tip of your nose was the center of the universe, right? As was everything else. But, if you want to think of it like something came from nothing, well, that something could be the universe or it could be God. If you say God came from nothing and God created the universe, that's 3 steps. If you say the universe came from nothing and created itself, that's 2 steps. In science, we have a principle called parsimony. And parsimony is that we defer to the simplest explanation because that gives us the best chance of being correct, right? Like you could say, I can't find my car keys. Now, one explanation could be that that aliens came down from another planet and had a particular interest in your car keys and beamed them up to their spaceship and made off with them. Or another explanation could be that you forgot them on the table. Right?
Simpler one.
Both are viable explanations, perhaps, but one is much more simple and has a much better chance of being correct. It was the principle of parsimony can be condensed, called Occam's razor, and William Occam said, I forget the actual Latin words, but the translation is that entities should not be multiplied beyond necessity, right? So in other words, don't make things up. Like the more steps you put in the process, each one of those steps is an opportunity to be incorrect.
Yes.
So the fewer the steps, the better your chances of being correct.
Yeah.
And the principle of parsimony is like at the root of science. It's the basis of science, which is that you always defer to the simplest explanation. And so that's what I would do when it comes to, where did the Earth come from? Where did life come from? Where did the universe come from? I would defer to the simplest explanation that represents the data.
So as a scientist looking at the simplest explanation, what do you think the meaning of us being here is? Or do you think it's totally random?
I don't think there is an extrinsic meaning, like a meaning that is imposed from the outside, right? I think each of us has the opportunity to decide what's meaningful. And, we're of this planet, we're of life. I don't think a bacterium is asking that question, right? So what's the meaning of life to a bacterium? Well, I don't think that question is appropriate. I don't think it applies, right? Bacteria exist because bacteria exist.
But
right?
we've evolved to something that can think about that.
We can contemplate it, but that doesn't mean that we have a purpose any more than a bacterium has a purpose. I think that we can make meaning in our lives and we can assign purpose to our lives. And I mean, I feel like I have a purpose here on this planet, but I don't feel like that's a preordained purpose that comes from the outside. Just as I feel about hope. I mean, knowing what I know about the climate crisis and the biodiversity crisis, it would be very, very easy to sink into despair. I don't have empirical hope. What I do have is the choice of hope. And I choose every day to wake up and be a hopeful person because I don't want to live a life without it.
Yeah.
Right? If I'm in that little lifeboat in the middle of the Pacific Ocean and it springs a leak, I'm going to be hopeful about that situation. I'm going to do something about it. I'm going to try to fix that situation. I'm not going to throw up my hands and say like, well, we're screwed. I'm just going to sit here until I die. I'm not going to do that. even though it might be a hopeless situation, I'm going to choose to have hope. And
Yeah, you seem like a very optimistic guy. You have a very good vibe about you. You don't seem like someone who's like, we're all fucked, you know?
What would be the point?
Yeah.
Right? I'm going to fight until I can't fight. And I think we all have to do that. I think hope is a choice, and I don't think we have any other choice.
I agree with you. I think that's the right way to look at it, especially like you said, if you know a lot about things going on and you don't like some of the trends. I mean, you can sit there and just complain about it, or you can try to be a part of the solution and have that hope that the shifts you're looking for will happen. It's a good way to look at it.
What I would say when I travel and I speak to people, I mean, I try to impress upon them the seriousness of the climate crisis and the biodiversity crisis, and the fact that we have to act now. And what I would ask of people, what I would ask of your viewers is, think about what's the hardest thing that you could do personally to push back on the climate crisis and the biodiversity crisis. And that's different for everybody. If you're a single mom trying to make ends meet, maybe that's not a lot right now. Little changes add up, and certainly voting is a powerful force. But if you're out there listening and you're a person with knowledge or a network of people to get things done, or money or influence, then, think about what's the hardest thing you can do. Find that thing and do that thing, because we're out of time.
I think and I think it's going to be on people to do that, because I think one of the worst things that has happened with our environment is that it has turned so strongly political. So I always use as an example, you will have countries like China and Russia who respectfully don't give a fuck about the environment. Like, they're going to do what they're going to do. They're not democratic countries. They're not, they're worried about power. They have despots running their country, and yet those two, for example, comprise such a large part of our earth that if they're not following laws, then nothing good is happening, right? So when you see some of the legislations come through where it's like countries in the Western world are like, we're going to sign up to do this. Well, if China and Russia aren't doing that, you're not getting anywhere. So what happens is it politically turns people off and makes it a political issue rather than a human issue. And a big thing that I like to do with my show is when there are stuff that are clearly human issues that shouldn't be, in my opinion, fought at like a ballot box. It's something we should all get behind. You got to get those voices in here to figure out ways to do that. And that's why I really like what Paul Rosalie does. Paul Rosalie doesn't even know who's running for office here. Paul Rosalie's in the Amazon actually doing the damn thing and getting people to care about it, coming on podcasts like mine and Joe Rogan and all these different shows and spreading the word. And then there's also the people, hopefully like a Ben, who is, this brilliant businessman who's started many companies. He has a lot of wealth, and now he's developing a company that's A, doing something very cool, but B, can use that cool thing to have real scientific effects in the real world. And I will say something I do really admire about Ben is that he has brought on so many people like you from all different kinds of backgrounds who have, whether it be from paleontology on your end or, someone like Forrest Galante who just loves looking at species around the world. I was just talking to him today. He's going to come on the show. Great guy. But, all these different people are coming together and you want the same thing. That's a beautiful thing to me. So I think you're leading by example in that way. And I think hopefully people listening to this podcast can, if there's people out there who are passionate about this and are inspired, they can study to do the types of things you do, or find a way to pitch in and figure out ways that we can all work together to save this little rock that we're spinning on.
Absolutely. And, something really sad has happened, which is the science has become politicized.
Yes.
And it's not political. I promise you, there are not Democratic thermometers and Republican thermometers, right? There's just thermometers.
That's right.
And we know how this stuff works, and it affects everybody. We're living on the same planet. And I don't know why it's a political issue, honestly. I don't know how it got to be that way.
I do. I see how it happened. I believe in a uniparty system. I know for a fact all these people have steak dinners together on K Street. That they think it's funny. A divided society is a compliant society, and this has been manufactured for years and years and years. And I can point back to when that happened, and it's gotten worse than even I thought it would. But I agree with you. It must be maddening to be a guy in your position and see that
there's
happen.
Politics. Like, play your games with something else.
Right.
This is the future of the planet that we all live on, that your grandkids are going to live on just as much as the next person's.
Agreed.
And you know, it wasn't that long ago, like in the early part of the 2000s, I remember there was a PSA with Hillary Clinton and Newt Gingrich sitting on a bench talking about climate responsibility. Like, what happened to that? Why can't we have that again?
Yeah. God, what a funny world. So much has happened since then. It's
Yeah.
crazy. Well, listen, Ken, this was awesome, man. I love talking about anything science, but like I said, we hadn't done a dinosaur podcast, so it's cool. It's so cool to also have someone like yourself who's literally in our backyard here in New Jersey doing this. So we're gonna have to do this again at some point if you're down.
You should come down and do one from the museum. How about that?
I'm definitely coming down to the museum to look at that. Me and Dee for coming down. I know my dad and my mom and dad live down there. They'd love to see this, so I definitely got to visit that place. It looks incredible.
You will find a fossil. I guarantee it.
That would
With
be
your own hands.
That's a bucket list kind of thing. Let's do it. Thank you so much, sir. I
You're welcome.
appreciate it. All
Pleasure.
right, everybody else, you know what it is. Give it a thought. Get back to me. Peace. Thank you guys for watching the episode. If you haven't already, please hit that subscribe button and smash that like button on the video. They're both a huge, huge help. And if you would like to follow me on Instagram and X, those links are in my description below.